This is the remarkable story of Dylan Crawford, a struggling mechanic whose life changed forever when he fixed a disabled girl's wheelchair using nothing but salvaged parts and ingenuity. What Dylan didn't know was that his act of kindness would catch the attention of Sebastian Morgan, billionaire CEO of Morgan Medical Technologies and the father who had abandoned young Ava Patterson years ago. When a fleet of black SUVs rolled into the small town of Hillside, nobody expected that by sunrise, Dylan would be offered a deal worth millions, a chance to help children worldwide, and an opportunity for two broken families to find healing. Join us as we discover how one man's compassion opened the door to an unimaginable future, proving that sometimes the most important repairs we make aren't to machines, but to each other's lives. Quick pause before we continue. Tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing. The worn-out sign of Crawford's Auto Care creaked in the morning breeze as Dylan Crawford lifted the garage's heavy steel door. The summer heat was already building, promising another sweltering day in Hillside. At 45, Dylan's once dark hair now showed streaks of grey at the temples, earned through years of bending over engines and raising his daughter alone. His weathered hands, marked with the calluses and small scars of a lifetime fixing machines, moved with practiced efficiency as he prepared for the day ahead. The small garage, with its oil-stained concrete floor, had been Dylan's sanctuary and burdened for nearly a decade. Every corner held memories, and every tool had its designated place in the organized chaos he called his shop. Dylan's eyes fell on the old toolbox in the corner, the one with Thomas Crawford hand-painted on the side. His father's legacy, passed down through generations of mechanics, now rested with him. "Dad, have you seen my history textbook?" Maya's voice called from the small office area at the back of the garage. Dylan smiled as his 16-year-old daughter emerged, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She'd been helping at the garage since she was tall enough to hand him wrenches, and even during summer break she insisted on being part of the family business before heading to her afternoon swim team practice. "Checked under the counter?" Dylan suggested, gesturing toward the reception area. Maya rolled her eyes but checked anyway, triumphantly retrieving the book moments later. "I've got a test on Monday. Mrs. Henderson is brutal with summer school." "Education first," Dylan reminded her, the familiar phrase hanging between them. It was what Melissa, his late wife, had always said before cancer took her 5 years ago. I know, Maya replied, with the good-natured exasperation of a teenager who'd heard the same refrain countless times. "But we've got Johnson's truck coming in at 10, and I promised I'd help with the transmission." Dylan checked his nearly empty appointment book. "Actually, Johnson called, pushed it to tomorrow. We've just got Mrs. Thompson's oil change this morning." The unspoken reality hung in the air. Business had been slow for months. Too slow. The bills piled up on Dylan's desk told a story of mounting financial pressure that he tried to shield. And from Maya, though she was perceptive enough to sense their precarious situation. "I could put up more flyers at the high school," Maya offered, seeing the concern her father tried to hide. Dylan forced a smile. "We'll be fine. Quality work speaks for itself." The bell over the door jingled, announcing their first visitor of the day. Lieutenant Noah Anderson stepped in, still in uniform, his squad car parked outside. "Morning, Crawford family," he greeted with the easy familiarity of a regular customer. "Just checking if my cruiser's ready for pickup?" Dylan wiped his hands. On the red shop rag perpetually tucked in his back pocket. "All set, Noah. New brake pads, rotors turned, and threw in an oil change on the house." "Appreciate that," Noah said, though they both knew that "on the house" was Dylan's way of thanking the officer for letting him make payments on Maya's braces last year when insurance fell short. As Noah paid his bill, exact amount, no tip refused, he lowered his voice. Heard anything from Dawson about the building? Dylan's face tightened almost imperceptibly. Not since the last notice. Noah nodded grimly. My cousin works at the bank. Says Dawson's serious about selling the whole block. This time, we've got till the end of the month, Dylan replied, his tone making it clear the subject was closed, especially with Maya in earshot. After Noah left, the morning passed slowly. Mrs. Thompson's ancient Buick received its oil change, and Dylan spent the rest of the time catching up on paperwork that revealed the full extent of their financial struggle. Maya alternated between studying at the front desk and helping organize inventory, what little they had. The lunch hour came and went. Dylan sent Maya to get sandwiches from the hillside diner, insisting she take enough money for herself, even as he calculated how to stretch the week's grocery budget. When she left, he sat alone in the quiet garage, staring at the past due notices, 3 months behind on rent, parts suppliers demanding payment. Maya's college fund, what had started as Melissa's dream for their daughter, sitting neglected. In an account he hadn't been able to add to in 2 years. The sound of wheels on pavement drew Dylan's attention. Through the open garage door, he spotted a girl in a wheelchair, struggling up the slight incline of the sidewalk. She couldn't have been more than 12, her thin arms straining against the worn wheels of a clearly outdated chair. Each push seemed to require immense effort, and one wheel caught repeatedly, throwing her off course. Dylan watched for a moment, then stepped outside. Need a hand there? The girl looked up, embarrassment and determination mingling on her face. I can manage, she insisted. Even as the chair lurched sideways again, Dylan approached slowly. Mind if I take a look at that wheel? Mechanics are kind of my thing. After a hesitant pause, the girl nodded. Dylan crouched down, examining the wheelchair with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent a lifetime understanding how things moved. I'm Dylan Crawford, he offered, noting the worn bearings and misaligned frame. Ava, the girl replied. Ava Patterson. Well, Ava Patterson, your right wheel bearing is shot, and this frame's been bent. His fingers traced a hairline crack in the metal. How long have you had this chair? Ava shrugged. Mom got it second-hand when I outgrew my old one. She says we'll get a new one when insurance approves it. Dylan recognized the situation immediately. Medical bureaucracy and insufficient funds. A combination he knew all too well from Melissa's. Illness? Where you headed? I could give you a push. Just to the library, Ava said, pointing down the street. I go there after school while Mom finishes her shift at the hospital. As Dylan helped navigate the wheelchair toward the hillside library, he couldn't help noticing how the uneven sidewalk made every movement a challenge. The chair itself was a basic model, heavy and unwieldy, with none of the features that would make it suitable for a growing, active child. This chair giving you trouble a lot? He asked casually. Ava's resigned expression answered before her words did. It's okay. Mom works really hard to take care of us. She's a nurse at Hillside General. That's important work, Dylan acknowledged, thinking of the nurses who had cared for Melissa in her final months. At the library entrance, Ava thanked him and insisted she could manage from there. Dylan watched her struggle through the doors, the chair catching on the threshold, despite the building's supposed accessibility. When Maya returned with lunch, she found her father at his workbench, sketching something on the back of an invoice. Dad? Everything okay? Dylan looked up, a familiar intensity in his eyes that Maya recognized, the look he got when he was solving a mechanical problem no one else could fix. That wheelchair, he muttered, almost to himself. Completely inadequate. Poor kid can barely move it herself. Maya set down the sandwiches. What wheelchair? Dylan explained his encounter with Ava, his description growing more technical as he outlined the chair's deficiencies. The frame's aluminum but badly designed. Center of gravities. All wrong, bearing shot, wheels too heavy? Sounds like it needs replacing, not repairing, Maya observed, unwrapping her sandwich. Dylan nodded absently, his mind already racing ahead. A proper chair would cost thousands, custom ones even more. He tapped his pencil against the sketch. AZ-ite reimagined wheelchair frame with a lower profile and redesigned wheel mounts. Maya recognized the look in her father's eyes. "Dad, we can barely keep the lights on here. I've got most of the materials already," Dylan continued, as if he hadn't heard her. "Aluminum tubing from the Wilson project, bearings from the racing bike we fixed last summer." "Dad," Maya said more firmly, "we need paying customers, not charity cases." Dylan finally looked at his daughter, and something in his expression made her words trail off. It was the same look he'd had when he'd built her a custom bike after Melissa died, channeling his grief into creating something that would bring joy. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the most important work isn't the kind that pays." The afternoon brought an unexpected customer, Harold Thompson, with his vintage Corvette needing carburetor adjustment. The job provided enough cash to cover the electricity bill at least. While Dylan worked, Maya noticed him collecting measurements from the Corvette's seat cushions and suspension system, storing the information for what she suspected was his new project. As evening approached and they prepared to close, Dylan noticed Ava struggling past the garage again, heading home after her library visit. He watched the determined set of her shoulders as she forced the unwieldy chair forward. "Ava," he called, out, wiping his hands on his shop rag as he approached her. "Got a minute?" She looked up, surprised to be remembered. "Hi, Mr. Crawford." "Dylan," he corrected. "Listen, I've been thinking about your chair. I might be able to make some improvements. Would you and your mom be okay stopping by the garage sometime?" Ava's expression mixed hope with skepticism. "For repairs. Mom doesn't have much extra right now for—" "Just to talk," Dylan interrupted gently. "No charge, promise." The girl studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Mom works until 6 tomorrow. We could come after." "Perfect," Dylan agreed, already mentally inventorying parts he'd need. After Ava continued home, Maya emerged from the garage, arms crossed. "Dad, what are you planning?" Dylan looked at his daughter, seeing so much of Melissa in her concerned expression. "That chair is more than inadequate. It's almost dangerous. The kid deserves better. And we can't afford to give it to her," Maya countered, her practical nature also inherited from her mother coming to the fore. Dylan put his arm around Maya's shoulders as they walked back into the garage. "Remember what Mom always said about measuring wealth?" Maya sighed, but couldn't help smiling. "It's not what you have, but what you give that makes you rich." "Exactly," Dylan said, his eyes moving to the photograph of Melissa on the office wall. "And right now, we might not have much, but we've got the skills to give something important." As they locked up the garage for the night, Dylan's mind was already racing with designs and adaptations, the prospect of a challenging project pushing aside thoughts of unpaid bills and George Dawson's eviction threats, at least for now. Across town, in the modest Mountain View apartments, Rachel Patterson helped her daughter Ava transfer from her wheelchair to the dinner table, noticing the way the girl winced as the chair's unstable frame shifted beneath her. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" Rachel asked, setting down plates of spaghetti for Ava and her younger sister, Lily. "I met someone today," Ava replied. "A mechanic. He said he might be able to help with my chair." Rachel's expression grew cautious. "What kind of help?" "Repairs, I think. He said no charge." Ava twirled spaghetti around her fork. "He seemed nice. His name's Dylan Crawford." Rachel processed this information carefully. Single motherhood had taught her to be wary of unexpected generosity, but she'd also learned that sometimes, in their small town, kindness came from genuine places. Crawford. From that garage on Main Street. Ava nodded. "We're going to see him tomorrow after your shift. Is that okay?" Rachel studied her daughter's hopeful expression. After years of watching Ava struggle with inadequate equipment while insurance denials piled up and her ex-husband remained unreachable, any possibility of improvement was hard to dismiss. "We'll see what he has to say," Rachel conceded, not wanting to either raise hopes or dismiss help prematurely. Meanwhile, in a luxurious penthouse overlooking Dallas Harbor, Sebastian Morgan reviewed quarterly projections for Morgan Medical Technologies. The company's adaptive mobility division showed strong growth, with their high-end wheelchairs commanding premium prices in the medical market. "The insurance approval rate issues are cutting into our accessible models division," Edward Reynolds noted, indicating a downward trend on one chart. Sebastian barely glanced at the section. The company's profit margins came from cutting-edge technology for those who could afford it, not bare-bones models for families struggling with insurance companies. "Focus resources on the advanced lines," he instructed, closing the portfolio. "That's where our future lies." Little did he know how soon that presumption would be challenged, or that in a small-town garage hundreds of miles away, a mechanic was about to reimagine what was possible for the daughter Sebastian had left behind. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The fluorescent lights of Crawford's auto care buzzed overhead as Dylan spread his sketches across the workbench. He'd stayed up half the night drawing variations of wheelchair designs, researching online with the garage's aging computer, and taking notes on optimal ergonomics for growing children. The clock on the wall read 5:30 a.m., nearly 2 hours before the garage officially opened, but Dylan had always done his best thinking in these quiet morning hours. The bell above the door jingled, and Roberto Reyes entered carrying a box of parts and a paper bag that smelled of fresh pastries. As Dylan's longtime friend and parts supplier, Roberto had a key and often stopped by early on his inventory rounds. "Working already?" Roberto asked, setting down the box and offering the bag. "Maria sent these. Says you're too skinny." Dylan accepted a pastry with a grateful nod. "Tell her thanks." Roberto scanned the sketches with growing curiosity. "These aren't car parts." He picked up a detailed drawing of a wheelchair wheel assembly. "What's this about?" Over the next 15 minutes, Dylan explained his encounter with Ava and the inadequacies of her current wheelchair. Roberto listened, occasionally asking questions about specific design elements, his expression shifting from curiosity to understanding. "So you're building a custom wheelchair," Roberto concluded. "For free, while Dawson's breathing down your neck about rent." Dylan sipped his coffee. "I've got most of the materials already. Odds and ends from other projects." "And the time? Labor?" Roberto pressed. "Dylan, you're a genius with machines, but business..." He trailed off, tactfully leaving the criticism unstated. "Some things matter more than money," Dylan replied simply. Roberto studied his friend's face, then sighed in resignation. "What parts do you need? I'll see what I can find in the warehouse." Before Dylan could answer, Maya appeared from the back room where she'd been quietly organizing supplies. "He needs lightweight aluminum tubing, sealed bearings, pneumatic tires, and proper cushioning material." She approached the workbench, pointing to specific parts of her father's designs. "And probably custom fasteners for these connection points." Both men turned to her in surprise. Maya shrugged. "I've been listening, and I'm not against helping Ava. I just worry about us too." Dylan smiled at his daughter with pride. Despite her practical concerns, she'd clearly been thinking about the project. "Your mom would be proud of that assessment." Maya's expression softened at the mention of her mother. "She'd probably be making a spreadsheet already to figure out how to do both." "Melissa always was the organized one," Roberto agreed. The mention of Dylan's late wife, bringing a moment of shared remembrance. The bell jingled again as Eleanor Lewis, Dylan's elderly neighbor, poked her head in. "Morning, Crawfords. Just checking if Maya's still watching Rusty tonight while I'm at my sister's." "Absolutely, Mrs. Lewis," Maya confirmed, "right after swim practice." "Perfect, dear. Oh, and Dylan—" Eleanor's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "Just heard from Cynthia at the library that George Dawson was meeting with some developers yesterday. Something about revitalization plans for this block." Dylan nodded, keeping his expression neutral. "Thanks for the heads up, Eleanor." After she left, Roberto let out a low whistle. "Hillside rumor mill running at full speed. But if Dawson's talking to developers, all the more reason to focus on work we can do now," Dylan interrupted, unwilling to dwell on threats he couldn't immediately address. "Let's talk about these parts." By the time the official workday began, Dylan had a preliminary list for Roberto and a clearer vision of what he wanted to create. The morning brought 2 oil changes and a brake job. Small jobs, but welcome income. Between customers, Dylan continually returned to his wheelchair sketches, refining details and making calculations. At lunchtime, Valerie Spencer, the local physical therapist, stopped by to pick up her repaired sedan. As Dylan processed her payment, he made a decision. "Valerie, got a minute? I could use your professional opinion on something." Curious, she followed him to the workbench where his sketches lay. As he explained the project, her initial surprise gave way to professional interest. "You're essentially custom building a pediatric wheelchair." Valerie studied the drawings with a critical eye. "These adjustments to the center of gravity would definitely improve maneuverability. And this cushioning system, would it work?" Dylan asked, watching her face carefully. Valerie nodded slowly. "With some refinements. The growing child aspect is tricky. Most commercial chairs aren't easily adjustable for long-term use." She pointed to several areas of the design. "You'll need to consider pressure distribution here and here, and the back support needs to accommodate proper spinal alignment." Dylan grabbed a pencil, taking notes as Valerie detailed specific ergonomic requirements. By the time she finished, his simple sketch had evolved into something far more sophisticated. "I'd like to meet this girl," Valerie said finally. "If you're serious about this project, I could provide better guidance after seeing her specific needs." "They're coming by after 6, Dylan replied. "Could you stop in?" Valerie checked her schedule on her phone. "I can make it by 6:30. "And Dylan, this is really something special you're doing." After she left, Maya approached her father. "That was smart, getting her involved." Dylan nodded, still focused on the revised drawings. "We need to do this right. Ava deserves more than just good intentions." Throughout the afternoon, word seemed to spread through Hillside's efficient grapevine. Aaron Parker from the hardware store dropped by with a donation of specialized fasteners that were just collecting dust anyway. Harold Thompson returned, ostensibly to check on his Corvette, but suspiciously carrying several yards of high-quality padding from his boat upholstery project. Even Lieutenant Anderson stopped in, mentioning that his brother worked with medical-grade plastics and might have some suitable materials. By closing time, Dylan had accumulated a small pile of donated supplies and multiple offers of assistance. The community's response both touched and concerned him. Clearly, people had been talking about his financial situation as well as his wheelchair project. At precisely 6:15, a modest sedan pulled into the garage's lot. Rachel Patterson emerged first, still wearing scrubs from her hospital shift, her tired eyes surveying the garage with cautious assessment. She helped Ava from the passenger seat and then retrieved the wheelchair from the trunk, unfolding it. With practiced movements, Dylan wiped his hands and stepped forward to greet them. "Miss Patterson, Dylan Crawford, we spoke briefly yesterday." Rachel shook his hand with the firm grip of someone used to establishing professional boundaries. "Rachel, please. Ava tells me you might have some ideas about her chair." "I do." "Come in," Dylan invited, leading them into the garage where he'd cleared a space near his workbench. "I've been working on some concepts I'd like to show you." As Rachel pushed Ava's wheelchair into the garage, Dylan observed how the girl gripped the armrests tightly with each bump and uneven surface. The chair itself made an irregular squeaking sound, and the right wheel continued to catch periodically. "First, I'd like to understand what you both like and dislike about the current chair," Dylan began, pulling up stools for himself and Rachel. "Ava, you're the expert here. What works and what doesn't?" Ava seemed surprised to be addressed so directly about her equipment. "Well, it's really heavy, hard to push myself for long, and it doesn't fit through some doorways." Dylan nodded, taking notes. "What about comfort? Support?" "The seat gets uncomfortable after about an hour," Ava admitted. "And it's hard to reach things because the armrests are too high." As Ava continued, Dylan asked specific questions about her daily routines, the environments she navigated, and activities she wished were easier. Rachel occasionally added medical context, explaining how Ava's spinal cord injury from a car accident 4 years ago affected her mobility needs. "The doctors say her upper body strength will continue to improve with therapy," Rachel explained. "But insurance only approved this basic model, and the waiting list for the adaptive sports program's equipment loans is 2 years long." Dylan spread out his sketches, explaining his initial concepts. "What I'm thinking is a chair that grows with Ava, adjustable in multiple dimensions, lighter frame, better wheels, and customized to her specific measurements and needs." Rachel studied the drawings, her medical training allowing her to grasp the implications of the design. "This would be significant. But I have to ask, why would you do this, and what would it cost?" The directness of her question didn't surprise Dylan. A single parent herself, Rachel likely recognized another parent's struggle and was wary of hidden costs or obligations. "My late wife was ill for 3 years before she passed," Dylan said quietly. "We navigated plenty of medical equipment issues ourselves. As for cost," he gestured around the garage, "I've got the skills and most of the materials already. Consider it my contribution to making Hillside a bit more accessible." Rachel didn't immediately respond, clearly weighing his words against her experiences with systems that rarely offered genuine help without complications. The bell jingled as Valerie Spencer arrived, breaking the thoughtful silence. After introductions, the physical therapist immediately engaged with Ava, asking permission before examining how she sat in her current wheelchair and observing her movements. "I see what you mean about the alignment issues," Valerie told Dylan. She turned to Rachel. "I've worked with Dylan before on adaptive equipment for my elderly patients. His engineering instincts are solid." The professional endorsement seemed to ease some of Rachel's reservations. What would the process involve? Dylan outlined his plan. Measurements today, constructing the frame over the next week, fittings and adjustments, then completion within 2 to 3 weeks if all went well. Ava would need to come in periodically for fittings, and I'd want your input throughout, Rachel. "I have shifts at the hospital, but we could work around them," Rachel said, her tone cautiously optimistic. She turned to Ava. "What do you think, sweetheart?" Ava, who had been quietly taking in the adults' conversation, looked directly at Dylan. "Could it be blue? My favorite color is blue." Dylan smiled. "Absolutely. Electric blue, navy blue, sky blue, you name it. Electric blue," Ava decided firmly. As Dylan began taking initial measurements, Maya emerged from the office with drinks for everyone. She knelt beside Ava. "While they're talking technical stuff, want to see something cool? I'm rebuilding a motorcycle engine in the back." Ava's eyes lit up. "Really? Can I see?" With Rachel's permission, Maya led Ava to her project in the rear of the garage. the two quickly falling into conversation about mechanical principles that Ava, surprisingly, seemed to grasp with enthusiasm. "She's always been interested in how things work," Rachel commented, watching them. "Before the accident, she was constantly taking apart household appliances. Nearly drove me crazy." "Sounds familiar," Dylan said, glancing at Maya. "My daughter's been that way since she could hold a screwdriver." As Valerie continued discussing specific therapeutic requirements, Rachel's phone rang. Checking the screen, she frowned slightly. "I need to take this. It's the hospital." She stepped outside for privacy. When she returned moments later, her expression had shifted to one of resigned frustration. "They need me to come back in. Staffing emergency." "Mom, we just got here," Ava protested, having returned with Maya. "I know, sweetheart, but there's no one else available for the overnight shift," Rachel explained gently. "Mrs. Garcia will come stay with you and Lily." Dylan could see the disappointment on Ava's face and the strain on Rachel's. He recognized the impossible balance of a single parent trying to provide both income and presence for their child. "Made good progress today," he assured them, "and we can continue another time that works for your schedule." Rachel gathered their things, her movements efficient, but tinged with the weariness of someone constantly adjusting to circumstances beyond their control. "Thank you for understanding, and for all of this." As they prepared to leave, Dylan made a quick decision. "Maya and I deliver Mrs. Thompson's car to her house every Thursday evening. We pass right by Mountain View Apartments. We could pick Ava up on the way back tomorrow, bring her here for an hour or so, if that would help." "With your schedule," Rachel hesitated, her protective instincts visibly at odds with practical needs. "I don't want to impose—" "It's no imposition," Maya interjected. "I could use another mechanic's perspective on my motorcycle project anyway." The genuine enthusiasm in Maya's voice seemed to tip the scales. Rachel and Dylan exchanged contact information, and arrangements were made for the following day. After the Pattersons left, Valerie helped Dylan refine his designs based on her observations. "This could genuinely change that girl's daily life," she noted, "but it's a big undertaking, Dylan." "One step at a time," he replied, already mentally organizing the project phases. As evening deepened, Maya and Dylan closed up the garage and headed home to their small house 3 blocks away. Over a simple dinner of spaghetti, Dylan's specialty, and one of the few meals he'd mastered since Melissa's death, Maya finally voiced the concern she'd been holding back all day. "Dad, I heard what Mrs. Lewis said this morning about Dawson and the developers." Dylan focused on twirling pasta onto his fork. "Hillside's full of rumors, but if it's true, if we lose the garage, then we'll figure something out," Dylan interrupted gently, "just like we always do. That's what you said when the transmission went out on the truck, and when the roof leaked last winter." Maya set down her fork. "Dad, I'm not a little kid anymore. I know things are tough." Dylan studied his daughter's face, seeing the maturity that had come too early after her mother's death. "You're right, things are tight right now, but the Jenkins job next week will help, and Lieutenant Anderson referred 2 new customers yesterday. And meanwhile, you're building a custom wheelchair for free," Maya pointed out, though without accusation. "Some things you do because they're the right business decision," Dylan said, reaching for his water glass. "And some things you do because they're simply right." Maya was quiet for a moment, then smiled slightly. "Mom would say the same thing, wouldn't she?" "Word for word," Dylan confirmed. Later that night, after Maya had gone to bed, Dylan sat at the kitchen table with his sketches and a cup of coffee, making detailed material lists and construction plans. His mind kept returning to Ava's expression when she'd talked about her. Favorite color, the simple childlike joy that momentarily overshadowed the daily challenges she faced. He thought about Rachel too, the familiar exhaustion in her eyes, the determined set of her shoulders as she balanced work and parenting alone. It mirrored his own journey these past 5 years, without Melissa. Outside, a light rain began to fall, pattering against the windows of their modest home. Dylan's gaze fell on the framed photograph of Melissa on the bookshelf, her smile bright, against the backdrop of the Grand Canyon from their last family vacation before her diagnosis. "I think you'd approve of this project," he said softly to the photograph, "though you'd have a spreadsheet and a strict budget already." The thought brought a sad smile to his face as he turned back to his work, sketching long into the night. As the rain continued its gentle rhythm against the windows, across town, in Mountain View apartments, Rachel Patterson sat at her own kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea and reviewing the notes she'd taken during their meeting with Dylan. Her medical training gave her enough knowledge to recognize that his designs incorporated principles found in wheelchairs, costing thousands more than Ava's current model. Her younger daughter Lily had fallen asleep hours ago, but Rachel could hear Ava still awake in their shared bedroom, the soft scratching of pencil on paper indicating she was drawing, likely mechanical designs inspired by her visit to the garage. Rachel's phone buzzed with a text from the hospital scheduling coordinator asking if she could take another extra shift next week. The request brought both relief at the additional income and guilt at the time away from her daughters. She typed a quick confirmation, then leaned back, closing her eyes briefly against the constant pressure of navigating their situation alone. The divorce had been finalized years ago, after Sebastian had made it clear that a family with a newly disabled child didn't fit his career aspirations. His child support payments came regularly, but impersonally through his company's legal department, along with the medical insurance coverage that never seemed to adequately address Ava's needs. Rachel hadn't told Ava about Dylan's offer to build her a custom wheelchair. Not yet. Experience had taught her to be cautious with hope, but for the first time in years, she felt a tentative optimism, not just for the wheelchair, but for the simple human connection that came from someone seeing her daughter's needs and responding with genuine care. In Dallas, Sebastian Morgan stood at the window of his penthouse, gazing at the city lights while nursing an expensive scotch. On the coffee table behind him lay the latest quarterly reports for Morgan Medical Technologies, showing exceptional growth in their high-end mobility division. His phone rang, a video call from his colleague Frank Blackwell in London. Sebastian answered, shifting immediately into executive mode as they discussed the upcoming medical technology conference, where they would unveil their newest wheelchair model, priced competitively for institutional buyers, but still generating healthy profit margins. The marketing team wants patient testimonials for the presentation, Frank explained, preferably children. Good optics. Sebastian nodded. Get the PR department on it. Find some photogenic kids, happy families. The usual approach. After ending the call, Sebastian returned to the window. For a brief moment, his mind flashed to an image he rarely allowed himself to recall, a younger version of himself holding a newborn Ava, marveling at her tiny fingers grasping his. The memory dissolved as quickly as it had formed, replaced by the cool, strategic thinking that had built his company into an industry leader. His phone buzzed with a reminder about tomorrow's early meeting. Sebastian set down his glass and turned away from the window. The past was the past. He preferred to focus on the future he could control. And that future, as far as he was concerned, had no space for regrets or second thoughts about the family he'd left behind. As he prepared for bed in his meticulously designed bedroom, Sebastian's gaze briefly landed on a small wooden box tucked away on a high shelf, the only object in the otherwise minimalist space that didn't match the sleek decor. Inside that box, untouched for years, lay mementos from another life, a hospital bracelet from Ava's birth, a family photo taken at her third birthday, and papers finalizing his divorce from Rachel. Sebastian closed his eyes, pushing away the unwelcome intrusion of memory. Tomorrow would bring another day of meetings, decisions, and the forward motion that had defined his life since leaving Hillside. The past belonged in that box on the shelf, sealed away from the present he'd carefully constructed for himself. The next morning in Hillside dawned clear and bright. Dylan arrived at the garage earlier than usual, eager to begin organizing materials for Ava's wheelchair. He'd spent hours the previous night researching the latest innovations in wheelchair design, determined to incorporate the best features within his limited resources. Roberto arrived shortly after, bringing not only the parts they'd discussed, but additional materials he'd found in the warehouse inventory. The knowing look they exchanged made it clear that Roberto was contributing more than just his professional services. "Maria sent breakfast," Roberto said, placing a container of homemade breakfast burritos on the workbench, "and she says to tell you she's praying for your project." Dylan smiled, accepting both the food and the sentiment with gratitude. "Tell her thanks for everything." As they sorted through the materials, Roberto grew serious, heard more about Dawson's plans. He's apparently got investors looking at turning this whole block into some kind of upscale shopping center. Dylan's hands stilled momentarily on the aluminum tubing he was measuring. "How solid is this information?" "Solid enough that the barbershop next door got a formal notice yesterday. 90 days. The implications hung in the air between them. If George Dawson's development plans moved forward, Dylan would have to relocate his business, an expense he simply couldn't afford, or close altogether. 90 days is a long time, Dylan said finally, returning to his measurements. A lot can happen. Roberto studied his friend's face. "You're not worried?" "I'm focused on what I can control right now," Dylan replied, his tone ending that line of conversation. The day brought a steady stream of customers, more than usual for a Thursday, Dylan noted with cautious optimism. By late afternoon, he'd made enough progress on the initial framework of Ava's wheelchair to feel satisfied with the day's efforts. At 5:30, he and Maya delivered Mrs. Thompson's refurbished Buick to her house across town, then drove toward Mountain View Apartments to pick up Ava as arranged. "You're really all in on this project, aren't you?" Maya observed as they drove. Dylan glanced at his daughter. "You think it's a mistake?" Maya considered the question seriously. "No, I think it's who you are, who Mom loved, who I'm proud to call my dad." She looked out the window at the passing houses. "I just worry sometimes." "That's part of growing up," Dylan acknowledged, finding the balance between caring and worrying. When they arrived at the apartment complex, they found Ava waiting eagerly by the entrance, supervised by an elderly woman Dylan assumed was the babysitter Rachel had mentioned. After brief introductions and confirming when they'd return Ava home, they headed back to the garage. Ava's excitement was palpable as Dylan showed her the beginnings of her new wheelchair's frame. "You really started building it already?" "Just the basic structure," Dylan explained, helping her examine the lightweight aluminum frame. "Now comes the important part, making sure it fits you perfectly." For the next hour, Dylan took precise measurements, while Maya entertained Ava with stories about the vintage motorcycles they'd restored together. The girl absorbed every mechanical detail with genuine interest, asking questions that revealed a natural aptitude for engineering principles. "You know a lot about machines for someone your age," Dylan observed as he adjusted his design based on the new measurements. Ava shrugged, though her expression showed pleasure at the recognition. "I read a lot at the library. They have these great books on how things work." She hesitated, then added more quietly, "It gives me something to think about besides, you know, my legs." The simple statement, delivered with matter-of-fact acceptance, struck Dylan deeply. He thought of the resilience it must take to face such challenges at such a young age. "Well, your brain clearly works incredibly well," he said, keeping his tone light. "Maybe you'll be an engineer someday." "That's what I want to do," Ava confirmed with unexpected seriousness. "Design things that help people like me." Dylan and Maya exchanged a glance, both recognizing the echoes of their own shared passion for solving mechanical problems. "In that case," Dylan decided, "you should help design this chair. It's your mobility we're talking about. You should have input on how it works." Ava's eyes widened. "Really? But I don't know enough about... You know how it feels to use a wheelchair." "Every day," Dylan interrupted gently. "That makes you the expert in the room." For the remainder of their time together, Dylan included Ava in each design decision, explaining technical concepts in terms she could understand and genuinely considering her suggestions. By the time they prepared to take her home, the girl was glowing with a confidence that transformed her entire demeanor. As they drove back to Mountain View Apartments, Maya sat in the back seat with Ava, the two deep in conversation about engine types and torque ratios. Dylan listened to their animated discussion, struck by how naturally the connection had formed between them. At the apartment complex, they found Rachel just arriving home from her shift, still in her hospital scrubs and looking exhausted. Her face brightened, however, at the sight of Ava's obvious happiness. "We had the best time, Mom," Ava exclaimed as Dylan helped transfer her to her regular wheelchair. "Mr. Crawford's letting me help design the new chair, and Maya's teaching me about engines." Rachel's gaze met Dylan's over her daughter's head, a silent question in her eyes. He nodded slightly, confirming the unspoken concern about raising Ava's hopes. "I'm glad you had fun, sweetheart," Rachel said, smoothing Ava's hair. "Let's get inside so Mr. Crawford and Maya can get home to dinner." "Actually," Dylan said, "we wondered if you and Ava, and Lily too, of course, might like to join us for pizza tomorrow night. We could work on the chair a bit more and then just hang out." The invitation surprised even him. It had been years since he'd initiated any social gathering beyond Maya's school functions. Rachel seemed equally caught off guard, hesitating visibly before responding. "That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to impose on your Friday evening." "It's no imposition," Maya assured her. "Dad makes the best homemade pizza. It's pretty much the only other thing besides spaghetti that he can cook without setting off the smoke detector." Dylan gave his daughter a mock-stern look that made both girls laugh. The sound of their laughter seemed to ease some of Rachel's hesitation. "Well, if you're sure, that would be nice, thank you." As they said their goodbyes and watched Rachel wheel Ava into the building, Maya nudged her father's arm. "Homemade pizza, huh? That's not exactly casual Friday fare for us." Dylan started the truck, avoiding his daughter's knowing gaze. "It's a project celebration, that's all." Maya hummed skeptically, but her smile remained as they drove home through the gathering dusk, the garage's future temporarily forgotten in the satisfaction of the day's progress. That night, as Rachel helped Ava prepare for bed, she noticed her daughter's unusually thoughtful expression. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" Ava nodded, then asked hesitantly, "Do you think Mr. Crawford's chair will really work? Like really make things easier?" Rachel sat on the edge of the bed, choosing her words carefully. "I think Mr. Crawford is very skilled at what he does, and I think he genuinely wants to help. But I also want you to know that whatever happens with the chair, you are amazing exactly as you are." Ava considered this. "I know, but being amazing is a lot more fun when you're not stuck watching everyone else play." She fiddled with her blanket. Today was the first time in forever that someone didn't see the wheelchair first and me second. The simple observation caught Rachel by surprise, illuminating something she hadn't fully recognized despite her best efforts as a parent. For all her focus on Ava's physical needs and emotional well-being, she hadn't seen how rarely people engaged with her daughter as just Ava, not a medical condition or a set of limitations. "Maya's really cool," Ava continued, unaware of her mother's revelation. "She knows everything about engines and doesn't treat me like I'm weird or broken. And Mr. Crawford listens to my ideas like they actually matter." Rachel leaned down to kiss her daughter's forehead, hiding the sudden moisture in her eyes. "That's because your ideas do matter, and you are definitely not weird or broken." Later, after both girls were asleep, Rachel sat at the kitchen table grading papers for the nursing course she taught part-time at the community college. Her mind kept drifting to the unexpected developments of the past 2 days and the Crawford family that had suddenly entered their lives. There was something refreshingly straightforward about Dylan, a quiet competence and genuine kindness that reminded her of her own father, and Maya seemed to connect with Ava in a way few of her peers did. The whole scenario felt like an unexpected gift, one that Rachel, accustomed to shouldering burdens alone, wasn't quite sure how to accept. Her phone chimed with a text message. It was from Dylan. "Quick question. Does Lily have any food allergies? For tomorrow, making dough in the morning." The simple, practical question made Rachel smile. She texted back a negative response, then added, "Let us bring something. Dessert." His reply came quickly. "Deal. Maya votes for chocolate anything." This small, normal exchange, planning a meal, accommodating preferences, struck Rachel with an unexpected wave of emotion. It had been so long since anyone else had shared even this minor aspect of parenting with her. She set her phone down and returned to her grading, but with a lighter heart than she'd felt in quite some time. Whatever came of Dylan's wheelchair project, these connections themselves felt like a gift to their small family. In his Dallas penthouse, Sebastian Morgan reviewed the final presentation for next month's technology conference, making minor adjustments to the marketing language around their newest mobility products. The glossy promotional images showed smiling children using Morgan Medical Technologies wheelchairs, professional models in carefully staged scenarios that bore little resemblance to the realities faced by most families. Sebastian's executive assistant Edward knocked and entered with a stack of reports. "The quarterly charitable foundation statements need your signature, and legal sent up the updated support payment documentation for your ex-wife." Sebastian signed the documents mechanically, barely glancing at the amounts. The child support and medical coverage for Ava were handled as corporate obligations, necessary commitments managed with the same detached efficiency as any other business requirement. "Will you be attending the Children's Hospital benefit next week?" Edward asked, collecting the signed papers. "The board is expecting you to present the donation check. Schedule it," Sebastian confirmed. Public philanthropy was good for the company image and provided valuable networking opportunities. As Edward left, Sebastian returned to his presentation, adjusting the marketing slogan to read, "Morgan Medical Technologies, transforming lives through innovation." The irony of promoting products his own daughter couldn't access remained safely compartmentalized in the distant corner of his mind, where he kept all thoughts of his former family. His phone rang. Dr. Alison Fletcher, head of research and development. "Sebastian, I've reviewed the focus group feedback on the new pediatric model," she began without preamble. "Parents love the features but say the price point is unattainable without exceptional insurance coverage." "That's not a design issue. It's a market reality," Sebastian replied smoothly. "Our target isn't average consumers, it's institutions and high-end private healthcare." "I understand the business model," Alison responded, a hint of frustration in her voice. "But I'm concerned about accessibility. We're developing incredible technology that most families who need it can't afford. That's why we have the foundation. Sebastian countered, for the PR stories and tax benefits. A pause followed his candid assessment. Sometimes I forget how pragmatic you are, Alison finally said, her tone carefully neutral. I'll adjust the development priorities accordingly. After ending the call, Sebastian stared at the presentation on his screen, particularly at the smiling child model in their flagship wheelchair. Something about the image suddenly struck him as hollow, a manufactured vision of impact that bore little resemblance to his company's actual priorities. For a brief, unexpected moment, Sebastian found himself wondering what Ava's life was like now. What kind of wheelchair did she use? Did insurance cover her needs? Had Rachel remarried, found someone to help shoulder the challenges he'd walked away from? The thoughts were unusual for him. Disruptions to the compartmentalized existence he'd carefully constructed. Sebastian closed the presentation file and stood walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased his success. Far below, Dallas sprawled in all directions, a landscape of opportunities and connections that had proven far more navigable than the complicated emotional terrain of family life. He had made his choice years ago, Sebastian reminded himself, and in business, looking back was rarely productive. Success required forward momentum, not reflection. With that firm reminder, he turned away from both the window and the unwelcome thoughts, focusing instead on the next day's agenda and the continuing expansion of his carefully constructed empire. Friday evening arrived with the warm glow of anticipation as Dylan prepared the kitchen for guests, an occurrence so rare that Maya teased him about actually cleaning behind the refrigerator. "It's just pizza, Dad, not a state dinner," she remarked, watching him arrange and rearrange the table settings. Dylan straightened a stack of plates. "It's called being a good host, something your mother excelled at." The mention of Melissa brought a shared moment of remembrance. These fleeting acknowledgements of her absence had evolved over the years, from painful wounds to gentle reminders of the love that had shaped their family. "Mom would have liked them," Maya said confidently, setting out napkins. "Especially Ava. She would have gone full mentor mode." The doorbell rang at precisely 6:30. When Dylan opened the door, he found Rachel with Lily on her hip and Ava in her wheelchair at the bottom of the porch steps, looking up at the 3 stairs with a mixture of resignation and embarrassment. "I didn't think about the steps," Dylan realized immediately, moving to help. "Story of our lives," Rachel said with a wry smile that held no bitterness. "We're used to improvising." Together, they navigated Ava up the stairs and into the house, the maneuver clearly a familiar routine for mother and daughter. Once inside, the initial awkwardness quickly dissolved as Lily, an energetic 8-year-old, began exploring the living room with unbridled curiosity, while Maya showed Ava her collection of automotive magazines. The kitchen soon filled with comfortable conversation as Dylan prepared the pizzas. Rachel chopped additional toppings, and the girls gathered around the table sharing stories and laughter. The domestic scene struck Dylan with unexpected poignancy. The house had not felt this alive, this full of family energy, since before Melissa's illness. "Maya tells me you were a master mechanic at Cooper's Luxury Auto before opening your own." "A shop," Rachel said as she expertly diced bell peppers. Dylan nodded, impressed by her knife skills. "Worked there 10 years. Good money, but the hours were brutal. After Melissa got sick, I needed more flexibility." "I understand that calculation all too well," Rachel replied. "I was on track for nursing administration until the accident. Had to reconfigure everything around Ava's needs." The straightforward acknowledgement of their parallel journeys created an easy connection between them. As Dylan slid the first pizza into the oven, he found himself sharing stories he rarely discussed, about learning mechanical skills from his father, about the early days of struggling to be both mother and father to Maya, about the community. that had supported them through Melissa's illness and beyond. Rachel reciprocated with her own experiences. Her move to Hillside for the lower cost of living, juggling nursing shifts with Ava's medical appointments, teaching night classes to supplement their income. The conversation flowed naturally, without pretense or the awkward pauses of people trying to impress each other. After dinner, while Maya entertained Lily with an impromptu art project at the kitchen table, Dylan invited Rachel and Ava to see his home workshop in the garage, where he'd been refining elements of the wheelchair design. "I've been working on the custom seat cushion," he explained, showing them a mold he'd created based on Ava's measurements. The material distributes pressure evenly to prevent soreness during long sitting periods. Rachel examined it with professional interest. "This is hospital-grade quality. Where did you get this foam?" "Harold Thompson donated it from his boat restoration project. The covering is from Automotive Upholstery, durable, waterproof, and breathable." As Dylan continued explaining his adaptations, Ava noticed a detailed sketch of the complete wheelchair pinned to his workbench. "Is that what it's going to look like?" she asked, wheeling closer. Dylan nodded. "That's the current design, but I was hoping you might have some input on the final appearance." Ava studied the sketch intently. "Could it have a lower profile? The tall back makes it look so medical." "Good point," Dylan agreed, making notes. "What about a contoured back that provides support but with a sleeker profile?" "Yes." Ava's enthusiasm brightened her entire expression. "And maybe a design on the wheel guards. Not flowers or anything babyish. Something cool." "Flames," Dylan suggested with a straight face. "Dad," Maya groaned from the doorway where she'd appeared with Lily. "Nobody does flames anymore. Racing stripes are way better." "Actually," Ava said thoughtfully, "what about a circuit board pattern? Like computer circuits? In electric blue and silver?" Dylan smiled at the unexpected but perfect suggestion. "Now that would be unique. We could use reflective paint for the silver parts, make it more visible at night too." Rachel watched this exchange with a mixture of emotions playing across her face. "You're really serious about this level of customization," she said quietly to Dylan, while the girls discussed design options. "Why make a functional chair that she doesn't love looking at?" Dylan responded simply. "The psychological aspect matters too." Rachel's eyes shone with barely contained emotion. "Do you know how many medical professionals have talked about Ava's equipment without ever once asking what she wanted it to look like?" Before Dylan could respond, the unmistakable sound of a car backfiring echoed from the driveway. He recognized the distinctive rattle of George Dawson's vintage Cadillac. "Is that your landlord?" Rachel asked, noticing Dylan's sudden tension. Dylan nodded, moving toward the side door. "Girls, stay here. I'll be right back." Outside, George Dawson was examining Dylan's truck with obvious disapproval. In his 70s, with the immaculately groomed appearance of old money, Dawson owned half the commercial properties in downtown Hillside, including the building housing Crawford's Auto Care. "Crawford," he acknowledged with a curt nod. "Hoped to catch you at the garage today. You're avoiding my calls." "Been busy," Dylan replied, maintaining a neutral tone. "Customer projects." Dawson's eyebrow arched skeptically. "Paying customers because your rent check for last month still hasn't cleared." Dylan felt a flush of embarrassment knowing Rachel might overhear this conversation. "I'll have it Monday. The Jenkins account is paying their balance then." "That's what you said last week." Dawson withdrew an envelope from his jacket pocket. "This is formal notice. 30 days to vacate the premises." Dylan stared at the envelope, not reaching for it. "We agreed on 90 days. "That was before I saw your financial statements. The development group won't wait, and frankly, neither will I. This is business, Crawford." The side door opened and Rachel appeared, her nurse's professional demeanor firmly in place. "Everything all right out here?" Dawson turned, momentarily surprised by her presence. His manner shifted instantly to practiced charm. "Just discussing some business with Mr. Crawford. I don't believe we've met." "Rachel Patterson." She extended her hand with confident poise. "I work at Hillside General." "George Dawson. I serve on the hospital board." His tone warmed considerably. "You must be new to the staff, 5 years in the ER, and now teaching in the nursing program as well." Dylan watched this exchange with reluctant admiration for Rachel's composed handling of the uncomfortable situation. Dawson seemed equally impressed. "The Nursing Education Initiative. That was my late wife's project." He glanced between Rachel and Dylan with obvious curiosity. "I had no idea you two were acquainted. Mr. Crawford is designing a custom wheelchair for my daughter," Rachel explained smoothly. "His expertise is quite remarkable." Something in Dawson's expression shifted, subtly. "A medical device, that's rather different from automotive repair." "The principles are similar," Dylan interjected, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Rachel continued, as if she hadn't noticed the tension. "Dr. West at the hospital is quite impressed with the design. He suggested it might have broader applications for pediatric mobility." This name-dropping of a respected physician, whether planned or improvised, had a visible impact on Dawson, whose family had the hospital's West Wing named in their honor. "Is that so?" Dawson said, his calculating gaze reassessing Dylan. "Well, that's interesting." An awkward silence followed, broken by Lily calling for her mother from the doorway. Rachel excused herself, leaving the two men facing each other in the driveway. Dawson studied Dylan with new consideration. "A medical device designer. That's not in your business registration." "It's a side project, helping a kid who needs it. Pro bono, I assume." When Dylan nodded, Dawson gave a short, humorless laugh. "Your business sense hasn't improved since high school, Crawford. Always giving away what you should be selling." He held out the envelope again. 30 days, unless you can come up with your 3 months back rent by next Friday. The development waits for no one." Dylan finally took the notice, the paper feeling unusually heavy in his hand. "I'll figure something out." "See that you do." Dawson turned to leave, then paused. "Interesting. Company you're keeping these days. The Patterson girl, that's Sebastian Morgan's ex-wife, isn't it?" The question caught Dylan off guard. "I wouldn't know." Dawson's expression suggested he didn't believe this ignorance. "Small world, Crawford. You've always existed on its edges, but some connections might be worth cultivating." With that cryptic statement, he returned to his Cadillac and drove away. When Dylan re-entered the house, he found Rachel gathering her daughter's belongings, her movements brisk and efficient. "I'm sorry about that interruption," Dylan began. But Rachel shook her head. "Don't apologize. I understand complicated landlord situations." She lowered her voice. 30 days doesn't sound like much time. "It's manageable," Dylan lied, forcing confidence into his tone. Rachel studied his face, clearly recognizing the false assurance, but choosing not to challenge it. "We should get going. Lily's getting tired." As they helped Ava navigate the porch steps back to Rachel's car, the girl's excitement about the wheelchair design remained undiminished by the adult's tension. "When can I see the progress again?" she asked eagerly. "How about Monday after school?" Dylan suggested. "The frame should be ready for first fitting by then." After the Pattersons departed, Maya helped her father clean up the kitchen in uncharacteristic silence. Finally, she spoke the question hanging between them. "Are we going to lose the garage?" Dylan set down the dish he was drying. "I'm working on solutions." "Like what, Dad?" "We're 3 months behind on rent. The Jenkins job isn't enough to cover it." "I've got some ideas," Dylan said, trying to project more confidence than he felt. "Lieutenant Anderson mentioned the police department needs maintenance for their fleet. That could be a steady contract." Maya's expression made it clear she recognized the fragility of these prospects. And what about Ava's wheelchair? We can't just stop now. We won't, Dylan assured her. That project continues no matter what. We'll find a way. Later that night, unable to sleep, Dylan sat at his home workbench reviewing his finances with brutal honesty. The numbers told a stark story. Without a significant influx of cash within 2 weeks, they would lose the garage. Even liquidating some of his personal tools would only delay the inevitable. The irony wasn't lost on him. His technical skills were valuable enough that people sought him out for complex repairs, yet he struggled to translate those skills into sustainable income. Dawson's criticism about giving away what he should be selling contained an uncomfortable truth. Dylan's gaze fell on the wheelchair design, now enhanced with Ava's circuit board pattern idea. The contrast between his financial reality and his commitment to this unpaid project might seem foolish from the outside. Yet something in him rebelled against the idea of charging a family already stretched thin by medical expenses. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Maya stood in the doorway, her expression serious beyond her 16 years. "I've been thinking," she said, sitting beside him. "What if we documented the wheelchair build? Made videos explaining the process, showing how it helps Ava?" Dylan looked at his daughter quizzically. "For what purpose?" "For fundraising. A GoFundMe or something, not just for us, but to make more chairs for other kids." She warmed to the idea, as she explained. "People love stories about helping children, and your designs are really innovative. If we showed how much these custom adaptations help, people might donate." The suggestion took Dylan by surprise. "I'm not comfortable asking for charity. It's not charity, Dad. It's community investment, like when everyone helped during Mom's illness." Maya pulled out her phone, already envisioning the campaign. "We could call it Crawford Mobility Project or something. Make it bigger than just Ava's chair." Dylan considered the idea, his initial resistance softening as he recognized the wisdom in his daughter's approach. "You really think people would care about a wheelchair design? I think people care about other people," Maya said simply. "Especially kids like Ava, who just want the same chances everyone else has." The next morning arrived with unexpected complications. Dylan had planned to spend Saturday making progress on the wheelchair frame, but a call from William Donovan about his stalled delivery truck brought an emergency repair job that couldn't wait. Though the income was welcome, the timing set back his project schedule. By late afternoon, sweating under the hood of Donovan's truck in the summer heat, Dylan was startled by the sound of familiar voices. Rachel appeared at the garage entrance, with Ava beside her, both carrying takeout containers from the hillside diner. "Thought you might need lunch," Rachel explained, setting the food on his workbench. "Maya texted Ava about your emergency repair situation." Dylan wiped his hands, genuinely touched by the gesture. "That's really thoughtful, thank you." "Consider it partial payment for the wheelchair," Rachel said lightly, though her expression conveyed deeper gratitude. As they shared the impromptu meal, Dylan noticed Ava studying Donovan's truck with obvious interest. "What's wrong with it?" she asked, wheeling closer to observe his work. Dylan explained the fuel delivery problem in simple terms, surprised when Ava asked follow-up questions that demonstrated real mechanical understanding. "You really do have an engineer's mind," he commented, impressed. Ava beamed at the recognition. "Mom got me these books from the library about mechanical systems. I've read them all twice." Rachel watched their interaction with quiet appreciation. "She used to take apart our toaster before the accident. Nearly gave me a heart attack finding small appliance parts all over the kitchen." "Sounds familiar," Dylan laughed, recalling similar experiences with Maya. "The true test of a budding mechanic is whether they can put things back together again. I always did." Ava defended herself with dignity. "Except the coffee maker. That had one extra screw." Their laughter was interrupted by the arrival of Roberto, carrying a special delivery of custom fasteners for the wheelchair. He greeted Rachel and Ava warmly, having met them briefly during their previous garage visit. These just came in, he explained to Dylan, showing him the specialized components. Lighter than standard, but twice as strong. Perfect for the adjustable features you designed. As Roberto and Dylan discussed technical specifications, Ava listened with rapt attention, occasionally asking questions that impressed both men with her quick grasp of mechanical concepts. "You've got a prodigy there," Roberto told Rachel quietly. Rachel nodded, a mixture of pride and something like wistfulness crossing her face. She gets her technical mind from her father. He is brilliant with technology and design. The momentary stumble revealed a complexity in her feelings about Ava's absent father that she quickly masked. After finishing their lunch and saying goodbye, Rachel paused at the garage entrance. "Dylan, about last night, with Mr. Dawson. If you're having financial difficulties with the garage, I hope our project isn't making things worse." Dylan shook his head firmly. "The wheelchair isn't the issue. The development plans for this block would be happening regardless. Still, if there's any way I can help..." "You already are," Dylan assured her. "Having something meaningful to work on, that's worth more than you know." Rachel seemed about to say more, but instead simply squeezed his arm in silent understanding, before following Ava to their car. Later that evening, after finishing Donovan's repairs, Dylan found Maya at the kitchen table surrounded by camera equipment borrowed from her friend Jason. "What's all this?" he asked, eyeing the setup with suspicion. "Research for our fundraising campaign," Maya explained, her enthusiasm undimmed by his previous reluctance. "Jason's helping me learn video editing. We can make really professional-looking content." Dylan sighed, recognizing the determined set of his daughter's jaw, identical to Melissa's when she'd made up her mind about something. "You're not letting this idea go, are you?" "Nope," Maya confirmed cheerfully. "And you know why? Because it's a good one. We're making something amazing for Ava, and there are thousands of kids like her who need the same help." The unassailable logic of her argument, combined with their financial reality, finally broke through Dylan's resistance. "All right," he conceded, sitting beside her. "But we do this right. Professional, respectful, and with Rachel and Ava's full permission." Maya's triumphant smile lit up her face. "Already asked them." Rachel says, "As long as we're focused on the technology and not treating Ava like a charity case, she's on board." Dylan shook his head in amused surrender. "You're something else, you know that?" "So I've been told," Maya replied with a grin reminiscent of her mother's. "Usually right before someone admits I'm right." Across town, Rachel sat at her kitchen table, reviewing medical insurance appeals for Ava's physical therapy coverage. The familiar frustration of bureaucratic denials was tempered tonight by a new sense of possibility inspired by Dylan's project. Her phone buzzed with a text message that made her breath catch. Sebastian's corporate assistant confirming next month's support payment and asking if Ava needed any special medical equipment that might qualify for additional coverage under their agreement. The timing of the inquiry, after years of minimal communication beyond required payments, struck Rachel as oddly coincidental. Had George Dawson somehow mentioned their connection? The town grapevine was notoriously efficient. Rachel typed a careful response detailing Ava's need for an updated wheelchair and the insurance company's partial denial of coverage. She hesitated before sending it, uncertain whether she wanted to invite Sebastian's involvement in any aspect of their lives beyond his financial obligations. In the end, pragmatism won out. Any additional support for Ava's needs was worth the discomfort of engaging with her ex-husband's corporate machinery. She sent the message, then set aside her phone, focusing instead on the memory of Ava's animated conversation with Dylan about mechanical systems, the most enthusiastic she'd seen her daughter in years. Whatever complications might lie ahead, That connection alone had already proved invaluable. Rachel returned to her paperwork with renewed determination, the weight of single parenthood feeling marginally lighter than it had just days before. Monday afternoon brought the watershed moment Dylan had been working toward. The basic frame of Ava's new wheelchair stood completed in the center of the garage, its lightweight aluminum structure gleaming under the workshop lights. Maya had cleared a space and set up her borrowed camera equipment, ready to document the first fitting. Valerie Spencer arrived early, bringing her professional expertise and a collection of adaptive cushions to test. "This frame design is remarkable," she commented, examining the chair's construction. "The adjustability factor alone puts it ahead of most commercial models." Dylan made final adjustments to the height settings, conscious of the importance of this first impression. The real test is whether it actually helps Ava. At precisely 4 o'clock, Rachel's sedan pulled into the garage lot. Dylan watched through the open door as she helped Ava transfer to her current wheelchair, the familiar struggle highlighting exactly why this project mattered so much. When Ava entered the garage and saw the frame, her expression shifted from curious anticipation to awestruck silence. The chair's sleek design bore little resemblance to traditional medical equipment. Its lines were smooth and athletic, the frame a perfect electric blue, just as she'd requested. "That's for me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dylan nodded, suddenly anxious about her reaction. "It's just the basic structure so far. We still need to add the cushioning, the circuit board design elements, and fine-tune everything, but it's beautiful," Ava interrupted, wheeling closer to examine the creation. "It doesn't look medical at all. It looks cool." The simple assessment released the tension Dylan hadn't realized he was holding. Rachel placed a hand on his arm, her silent gratitude more eloquent than words. "Ready to try it?" he asked, crouching to Ava's eye level. The transfer process was carefully orchestrated, with Valerie guiding proper positioning while Dylan made mental notes of adjustments needed. Maya filmed discreetly, keeping the focus on the technical aspects. As promised, when Ava settled into the new frame, the difference was immediately apparent. The chair's proportions matched her body perfectly, its center of gravity calibrated to her specific dimensions. The lightweight construction meant even slight movements translated to responsive mobility. "Try moving around," Dylan encouraged. Ava pushed the wheels tentatively at first, then with growing confidence as she realized how much less effort was required. The chair responded to her touch like an extension of herself, turning smoothly and rolling with minimal resistance. "Mom, look how easy!" Ava's face lit with wonder as she executed a tight turn that would have been impossible in her old chair. It's like the difference between pushing through mud and gliding on ice." Rachel watched, her professional composure momentarily cracking to reveal the emotion beneath. "It's incredible, sweetheart." Valerie conducted a series of mobility tests, having Ava navigate a makeshift obstacle course Dylan had set up. The clinical assessment confirmed what was visibly apparent. The custom design dramatically improved Ava's independent mobility. "The energy conservation factor alone is significant," Valerie noted, recording measurements. "She's using approximately 40% less effort for basic movement, which means less fatigue throughout the day." As Ava continued exploring the chair's capabilities, Rachel pulled Dylan aside. "I don't know how to properly thank you for this," she said quietly. "Do you understand what you've created here? This isn't just equipment, it's freedom." Dylan watched Ava execute another smooth turn, her laughter echoing through the garage. "That's all the thanks I need right there." The fitting session extended well beyond the planned hour, as Dylan made numerous small adjustments based on Ava's feedback. Each tweak brought improvements in comfort and functionality, the chair evolving into something truly customized to her specific needs. "The adjustable height feature is genius," Valerie commented, as Dylan demonstrated how the chair could be raised or lowered to accommodate different surfaces and activities. And these quick-release wheels for car transfers will make Rachel's life so much easier. By the time they finished the initial fitting, Ava was reluctant to return to her old wheelchair. "Just a few more minutes," she pleaded. "This one actually lets me move like everyone else." The comment highlighted the profound impact of Dylan's work more powerfully than any technical assessment could have. This wasn't just about mobility, it was about equality, about allowing a child to participate in life on her own terms. As Rachel helped Ava transfer back to her original chair, Dylan outlined the next steps. "I'll add the cushioning system and wheel guards this week, finish the circuit board design elements, and we should have the completed chair ready by Friday." "So soon?" Rachel asked, surprised. Dylan nodded, not mentioning that his accelerated timeline was driven partly by Dawson's eviction deadline. No reason to make Ava wait any longer than necessary. After the Pattersons left, Maya began reviewing the footage she'd captured, her expression growing increasingly excited. "Dad, this is gold. The before and after contrast is incredible." Dylan watched over her shoulder as she compiled clips highlighting the design features and Ava's transformed mobility. "You're right. The difference is more dramatic than I expected." "I've already started building the campaign page," Maya continued. "With this footage, we can launch by tomorrow evening. I'm thinking we call it Mobility Reimagined, the Crawford Project." That evening, as Dylan worked late, adding the cushioning system to Ava's chair, he received an unexpected visit from Dr. Benjamin West, who arrived just as he was preparing to. "Close. Hope I'm not intruding," the orthopedic specialist said, looking around the garage with interest. "Valerie Spencer mentioned your project, and I was intrigued enough to stop by." Dylan wiped his hands on his shop rag. "Not at all. I was just finishing up for today." Dr. West examined the wheelchair with professional curiosity, asking detailed questions about the design principles and material choices. His assessment was methodical, his questions increasingly specific. "This weight distribution system is innovative," he noted, testing the chair's balance. "And the adjustable components solve problems we see constantly in pediatric mobility. Did you patent any of these features?" The question caught Dylan off guard. "Patent? No, I was just trying to help Ava." Dr. West raised an eyebrow. "You've created something with significant commercial potential here, Mr. Crawford. These adaptations could benefit thousands of children." The suggestion seemed so far removed from Dylan's immediate concerns that he hardly knew how to respond. "I'm just a mechanic, Dr. West. I fix things that need fixing. And sometimes that's exactly how innovation happens," Dr. West replied. "Outside the traditional channels, driven by necessity rather than profit." He handed Dylan his business card. "Consider documenting your process. I have colleagues at the Medical Device Innovation Conference next month who would be very interested in this approach." After the doctor left, Dylan stared at the card, trying to reconcile this unexpected validation with his precarious financial reality. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd created something potentially valuable while facing eviction from his business. The next morning, Maya launched their fundraising campaign on schedule. Her video editing skills had transformed the raw footage into a compelling narrative that showcased both the technical innovations and their impact on Ava's life. The campaign goal was modest, enough to cover materials for 5 more custom wheelchairs for children in similar situations. "Spread the word," Maya instructed Lieutenant Anderson when he stopped by for his regular maintenance appointment. "The more people who see it, the better chance we have of reaching our goal." By afternoon, the campaign had gathered modest local attention. Tara Wright from the Hillside Gazette arrived to interview Dylan about the project, bringing her photographer, Daniel, to capture images of the wheelchair and the garage. What inspired you to create a custom wheelchair rather than helping the family purchase a commercial one? Tara asked, recording their conversation. Dylan considered the question carefully. Commercial chairs are designed for the average user, but there's no such thing as an average child. Ava deserves equipment as unique as she is. The photographer captured images of Dylan working on the final elements of the chair, adding the reflective circuit board pattern to the wheel guards that had become Ava's signature contribution to the design. And the fundraising campaign is to help other children, Tara confirmed, reviewing her notes. That's right. There are many families facing similar challenges. The goal is to provide custom chairs for kids who need them, regardless of their insurance, coverage, or financial situation. After the reporters left, Dylan received a call from Rachel that shifted the day's momentum entirely. "You might want to sit down for this," she began, her voice vibrating with contained excitement. "I just got a call from my ex-husband's office. They've approved additional medical equipment coverage, specifically for a customized wheelchair." Dylan processed this unexpected development. "That's wonderful news for Ava." "It's more than that," Rachel continued. "They're offering to cover the full cost of your design, plus compensate you for your time and expertise. Apparently, the insurance specialist was very impressed by the specifications I sent them." The offer represented an elegant solution to Dylan's immediate financial crisis. The compensation would likely cover a significant portion of his back rent. Yet something about the timing and sudden corporate interest triggered his caution. "That's very generous," he said carefully. "Did they mention how they learned about the wheelchair? I assumed it was because I submitted the specifications when they asked about Ava's equipment needs." Rachel replied. "Why? Is something wrong?" "No, not at all," Dylan assured her, unwilling to dampen her evident relief at this financial assistance. "It's great news for Ava." After they hung up, Dylan sat staring at the nearly completed wheelchair, trying to make sense of the rapid developments. The chance to be properly compensated for his work should have been unequivocally good news. Why then did it leave him with an unsettled feeling? Later that evening, as he applied the final touches to the circuit board design, Maya burst into the garage, waving her phone excitedly. "Dad, you won't believe what's happening with the campaign. We're trending locally. We've already hit 20% of our goal in just one day." Dylan looked up from his work, genuinely surprised. "Already? That's fantastic. And look at these comments," Maya continued, scrolling through a stream of supportive messages. "People are sharing it like crazy. Even some medical professionals are weighing in, saying your design addresses issues they see constantly with commercial chairs." The positive response to their project provided a welcome counterbalance to Dylan's financial worries. Whatever happened, with his garage, the wheelchair itself was clearly making an impact beyond what he'd initially imagined. Wednesday brought another significant development. Dr. West returned to the garage, this time accompanied by a colleague from Valley View Medical Center. "Mr. Crawford, this is Dr. Lisa Moore, head of pediatric rehabilitation," he introduced. "I hope you don't mind, but after seeing your work, I thought she might provide valuable feedback." Dr. Moore spent nearly an hour examining the wheelchair's features, particularly the adjustable growth components that allowed the chair to expand as a child developed. "The commercial models require new purchases every couple of years," she explained to Dylan. "That creates significant financial burden for families already struggling with medical expenses." Her professional assessment confirmed what Dylan had intuited through observation and mechanical understanding. "Your design addresses that fundamental flaw brilliantly. Have you considered how this could be scaled for wider production?" Once again, Dylan found himself facing questions about commercialization that seemed disconnected from his original purpose. "I've been focused on getting this right for Ava. The broader applications haven't been my priority." Dr. Moore exchanged Glances with Dr. West. Well, they should be. This design could help countless children. Would you be open to presenting your work at our Regional Medical Innovation Forum next month? The invitation both honored and overwhelmed Dylan. I'm not a medical professional, he protested. I'm just a mechanic who solved a problem. Sometimes, that outside perspective is exactly what medicine needs, Dr. Moore replied. Think about it. The forum brings together developers, practitioners, and patients. Your practical approach would be refreshing. After they departed, Dylan's phone rang, Roberto calling with unusual urgency. Dylan, you need to check the fundraising page. Something big is happening. Dylan pulled up the campaign on the garage's computer and stared in disbelief. The modest goal they'd set had been not just met, but exceeded by over 400%. Donations were pouring in from well beyond Hillside, accompanied by comments from parents of children with mobility challenges and medical professionals alike. What happened? Dylan asked, stunned by the sudden explosion of support. Your campaign got picked up by a major medical technology blog, Roberto explained. They're calling your design revolutionary in its simplicity. There's even talk about your work in some of the industry forums. People are calling you the mechanic who's disrupting medical device design. The unexpected attention left Dylan both gratified and unsettled. His focus had been so narrowly fixed on helping one child that the broader implications of his work had remained peripheral to his consciousness. By Thursday morning, the situation had evolved even further. Tara Wright's article in the Hillside Gazette had been picked up by larger news outlets, and requests for interviews began coming in from regional media. The fundraising campaign continued to grow, while comments poured in from families desperate for similar solutions for their children. In the midst of this whirlwind, Dylan remained focused on completing Ava's wheelchair for the Friday delivery he'd promised. Each component was meticulously finished, the reflective circuit board pattern applied with precision to the wheel guards, the cushioning system perfected for optimal support and comfort. As he worked, Maya fielded calls and managed the growing media interest, remarkably composed for a 16-year-old suddenly thrust into a public relations role. Dad, a medical technology investor wants to talk to you about potential production opportunities, she reported, covering the phone's microphone. What should I tell him? Take his number, Dylan instructed, not pausing in his meticulous adjustment of the wheel alignment. I'll call back after we deliver Ava's chair tomorrow, Rachel called mid-afternoon, her voice tinged with bewilderment. Have you seen the news coverage? Ava's physical therapist at school called to ask if we're the family mentioned in the articles. It's gotten a bit out of hand, Dylan acknowledged, but the chair will be ready tomorrow as promised, media circus or not. It's incredible, Rachel said softly. All this attention for something you started simply because you saw a child struggling and decided to help. That evening, as Dylan was making final calibrations to the chair's balance, he received an unexpected visitor. George Dawson arrived. Just before closing, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the now famous wheelchair positioned prominently in the center of the garage. Crawford, he acknowledged with a nod. Seems you've been making quite a splash in unexpected circles. Dylan continued working, not looking up. Just finishing a project, Dawson. Did you need something? Information, mainly. Dawson circled the wheelchair with calculating interest. I've had 3 calls today about your, what are they calling it? Innovative adaptive mobility design. People seem to think my property. Ours is the next big thing in medical technology. Now Dylan did look up, noting the speculative gleam in his landlord's eyes. It's just a wheelchair for a kid who needed something better than what she had. A wheelchair that's attracted attention from medical device manufacturers, investment groups, and the regional health network. Dawson adjusted his expensive watch. Quite a coincidence, given our conversation about your imminent eviction. Dylan set down his tools, facing Dawson directly. If you're here about the rent, I'm working on it. Should have at least partial payment by tomorrow. Actually, Dawson said, his tone shifting to one of calculated geniality, I'm here to discuss a possible reconsideration of our timeline in light of your project's potential. The transparent opportunism might have been amusing if Dylan's livelihood hadn't hung in the balance. Meaning that having an innovative medical device designer as a tenant might be more valuable than I initially calculated. Dawson smiled thinly. Perhaps we could extend your deadline while you explore these new opportunities. Before Dylan could respond, the garage door opened and Sebastian Morgan's executive assistant, Edward Reynolds, entered, his tailored suit dramatically out of place among the tools and engine parts. "Mr. Crawford?" he inquired, glancing between Dylan and Dawson. "I represent Morgan Medical Technologies. Our CEO is very interested in discussing your wheelchair design." The reference to Morgan froze Dylan momentarily as connections suddenly crystallized in his mind. Morgan Medical Technologies, the company owned by Ava's father, Rachel's ex-husband. The timing of the insurance approval, the sudden corporate interest, it all pointed to Sebastian Morgan's awareness of his project. Dawson's expression shifted to one of keen interest as he extended his hand to the corporate representative. "George, Dawson, I own this building and have been a long-time supporter of Mr. Crawford's innovative work." The breathtaking hypocrisy of this statement might have provoked Dylan to laughter under different circumstances. Instead, he found himself navigating a bizarre situation where his landlord, who had been on the verge of evicting him days earlier, now positioned himself as a patron of his work. "Mr. Morgan would like to meet with you tomorrow to discuss potential collaboration," Edward continued, seemingly unaware of the underlying tensions. "He's very impressed with your design approach and believes it aligns well with some of our development initiatives." "Tomorrow?" Dylan repeated, thinking of his promised delivery to Ava. "That won't work. I have a prior commitment." "I assure you, Mr. Morgan rarely makes these offers personally," Edward pressed. "He's flying in specifically to meet with you." Dylan suddenly understood that Sebastian Morgan, whether by coincidence or design, had no idea that the wheelchair being discussed was intended for his own daughter. The realization added another layer of complexity to an already complicated situation. "Friday afternoon," Dylan said firmly. "After 4 p.m., that's the earliest I'm available." Edward looked surprised by the counteroffer, but recovered quickly. "I'll convey your availability to Mr. Morgan. He'll be very interested in seeing your completed prototype." After Edward departed, Dawson lingered, his earlier threatening demeanor now replaced with calculated friendliness. "Morgan Medical Technologies," he mused. "Quite the opportunity, Crawford. I always said you had potential beyond this garage." "Did you?" Dylan replied dryly. "Must have missed that between the eviction notices." Dawson waved this comment away, as if it were a minor misunderstanding. "Business is business, but I believe in supporting local innovation. Perhaps we should discuss a new lease arrangement, one that accommodates your expanding horizons." As Dawson outlined increasingly favorable terms, Dylan reflected on the strange turn of events. His simple act of helping a child had somehow positioned him at the intersection of corporate interest, medical innovation, and community support, a far cry from the struggling mechanic he'd been just days earlier. What remained uncertain was how these developments would affect his commitment to Ava and her family, particularly when Sebastian Morgan discovered exactly whose life his mechanic's innovation had transformed. In his Dallas office, Sebastian Morgan reviewed the preliminary report on Dylan Crawford's wheelchair design. Impressed by the elegant solutions to problems his own engineers had approached, with far more costly and complex technology. The simplicity is what makes it brilliant, Dr. Alison Fletcher explained, highlighting specific features. His automotive background gave him a fresh perspective on mobility challenges. Sebastian nodded, studying the images captured from the fundraising campaign. Schedule the jet for tomorrow morning. I want to see this prototype myself before our competitors catch wind of it. Already done, Edward confirmed, though Crawford was oddly inflexible about meeting times, insisted on after 4 p.m. tomorrow. Sebastian dismissed this detail as irrelevant. Mechanics, they operate on their own schedules. The important thing is securing this design approach before someone else does. As his team filed out to prepare for tomorrow's trip to Hillside, Sebastian remained at his desk, reviewing the materials. Something about this story nagged at him, a small-town mechanic creating an innovative wheelchair design that addressed problems his own highly paid development team had struggled with. The coincidence seemed almost orchestrated, though by whom, or for what purpose, he couldn't yet determine. Tomorrow's meeting would hopefully provide clarity and a straightforward business opportunity that would benefit Morgan Medical Technology's market position. What Sebastian couldn't possibly anticipate was how this business trip would shatter the carefully constructed walls between his corporate present and the family he'd left behind, forcing a confrontation with choices made years ago and their lasting consequences for a daughter he barely knew. Friday morning arrived with a sense of culmination and anticipation. Dylan had worked through much of the night, perfecting the final elements of Ava's wheelchair until every component met his exacting standards. The completed chair stood in the center of his garage, a testament to craftsmanship and purpose that transcended its utilitarian function. The electric blue frame gleamed under the workshop lights, its lightweight structure belying its strength. The reflective circuit board pattern adorning the wheel guards caught the light at different angles, creating a dynamic visual effect that was both sophisticated and playful. Every element from the cushioning system to the adjustable components had been calibrated precisely to Ava's measurements and needs. Maya arrived early, camera in hand, to document the final result before the delivery. "It's perfect, Dad," she said softly, capturing different angles of the chair. "Honestly, it's beautiful." Dylan ran his hand along the frame, checking one last connection. "Function matters more than appearance." "But you nailed both," Maya countered. "That's why people are responding so strongly. It solves real problems while looking like something a kid would actually want to use." The morning brought a steady stream of visitors to the garage, some legitimate customers, others clearly curious about the wheelchair that had captured regional attention. Lieutenant Anderson stopped by, ostensibly for an oil change, but mainly to report on the community's reaction. "The mayor called me this morning," he mentioned casually, "wondering if you'd be willing to speak at next month's business development forum. Apparently, your project has sparked interest in attracting more innovative small businesses to Hillside." Dylan shook his head, still adjusting to his unexpected notoriety. "I'm just a mechanic who built a wheelchair, Noah. A wheelchair that's gotten more attention than anything that's happened in Hillside since the flood of '98, Noah pointed out. "Speaking of which, have you seen the funding total this morning?" Maya checked her phone and gasped. "We're at 700% of our goal. Dad, that's enough for at least 30 custom wheelchairs." The implications of this success were still settling in when Valerie Spencer arrived, bringing specialized equipment to conduct a final assessment of the chair's therapeutic properties. "The medical equipment distributor in Valley View called me yesterday," she informed Dylan as she calibrated her measurement tools. "They're interested in discussing potential production arrangements. Apparently, several of my colleagues have been talking up your design." These developments created a surreal backdrop to Dylan's primary focus, the 4 p.m. delivery to Ava. Each distraction was politely but firmly deferred until after that commitment was fulfilled. At noon, Roberto arrived with lunch for Dylan and Maya, correctly guessing they hadn't taken time to eat. "The whole town's talking about you," he remarked, distributing sandwiches from the hillside diner. "Joseph says he's naming a sandwich after you, the Crawford Innovation." Dylan accepted the food gratefully, but with evident discomfort at the attention. "This wasn't about publicity, Roberto." "No," his friend agreed, "which is exactly why it's getting so much. People recognize authenticity when they see it." The conversation shifted to more practical matters as Dylan outlined the implementation plan for the additional wheelchairs now funded through the campaign. Roberto had already volunteered his warehouse space for a proper workshop, while Valerie had compiled a preliminary list of children in surrounding counties who could benefit from custom mobility solutions. "We'll need to establish proper assessment protocols," Valerie explained, "to ensure each chair addresses the specific needs of each child." As they discussed logistics, Dylan's phone rang, Rachel calling with an unexpected complication. "Ava's school just contacted me," she began, her voice tight with controlled frustration. "They're requesting a media exemption form because apparently there are reporters wanting to cover her receiving the wheelchair. Someone leaked the delivery time." Dylan's expression darkened. "I haven't told anyone outside the garage about the 4 p.m. delivery." "It doesn't matter now," Rachel sighed. Rachel. "The school principal is concerned about disruption, and frankly, I don't want Ava turned into a spectacle." After a moment's consideration, Dylan offered an alternative. "What if we do the delivery here at the garage instead? Private, controlled, environment, just family and friends." The solution satisfied both Rachel's desire for privacy and the school's concerns about disruption. They agreed on the new arrangement, with Rachel bringing Ava directly to the garage after school. As the afternoon progressed, Dylan methodically addressed final details, while Maya managed the increasing phone calls and emails generating from their campaign. By 3 o'clock, the garage was prepared for Ava's arrival, the wheelchair positioned perfectly, a small celebration area set up in the corner with refreshments arranged by Maria Reyes. At 3:15, Dylan received an unexpected call from Edward Reynolds. "Mr. Crawford, there's been a change of plans. Mr. Morgan's jet arrived early, and he's wondering if you might be available sooner than 4 p.m. for your meeting." Dylan's response was immediate and firm. "Not possible. I have a prior commitment that cannot be rescheduled." "Mr. Morgan rarely adjusts his schedule for anyone," Edward pressed, his tone conveying the exceptional nature of the request. "He's very eager to discuss your design, and I'll be happy to meet with him after 4:30, Dylan maintained. "My current commitment takes precedence." The assistant's sigh was audible through the phone. "Very well. Mr. Morgan will meet you at your garage at 4:30. He's particularly interested in seeing the completed prototype in action." This last comment gave Dylan pause. He hadn't planned on Sebastian Morgan witnessing Ava's reaction to her new wheelchair, a moment that now seemed intensely private given the complicated family dynamics involved. "The prototype will be unavailable by then," Dylan explained carefully, "but I have all the design specifications and can discuss the technical aspects in detail." After ending the call, Dylan briefed Maya on the situation. "Sebastian Morgan is coming here at 4:30. We need to make sure Ava and Rachel have privacy for the delivery, then help them leave before he arrives." Maya's eyes widened as she processed the potential complications. "Does Mr. Morgan know the wheelchair was built for his daughter?" "I don't think so," Dylan replied. "And that revelation should come from Rachel, not us." At precisely 3:45, Rachel's Sedan pulled into the garage lot. Dylan watched through the window as she helped Ava from the car, the girl's excitement palpable even from a distance. Lily bounced alongside them, clearly caught up in her sister's anticipation. When they entered the garage, Ava's gaze immediately locked onto the completed wheelchair. Her expression transformed from eager anticipation to breathless wonder as she took in every detail of the finished design. "You added the circuit pattern," she whispered, wheeling closer to examine the reflective design on the wheel guards. "It's exactly how I imagined it." Dylan crouched beside her current wheelchair. Ready to try it out? The transfer was smoother this time, Ava's familiarity with the new chair making the process nearly effortless. As she settled into the custom seat, the perfect fit was immediately apparent. Her posture improved, her body supported exactly where needed. "How does it feel?" Rachel asked, watching her daughter with barely contained emotion. Ava didn't immediately answer, instead pushing the wheels experimentally, testing the chair's response to her touch. The fluid movement, the perfect balance, the way the chair seemed to anticipate her intentions, all coalesced into an experience fundamentally different from her previous mobility. "It feels like me," she finally said, executing a tight turn. That would have been impossible in her old chair. "Like it's part of me, instead of something I'm stuck in." Maya captured the moment on camera, her filming discreet and respectful as Ava explored the chair's capabilities. Each feature Dylan had incorporated, the adjustable height, the responsive turning radius, the specially designed push rims that reduced strain on her shoulders, revealed itself through Ava's natural movements. "The cushioning is perfect," Rachel noted professionally, observing her daughter's improved posture, "and the back support addresses exactly the alignment issues we've been struggling with." Dylan handed Ava a small booklet he'd created. "This explains all the adjustable features. As you grow, the chair can be modified to grow with you. These components here and here can be adjusted without special tools." Ava studied the manual with genuine interest, asking specific questions about the mechanical principles involved. Her understanding of the design impressed even Dylan, who recognized in her the same innate mechanical aptitude he and Maya shared. As Ava continued exploring her new mobility, performing increasingly confident maneuvers around the garage, Rachel drew Dylan aside. "I don't have adequate words for this," she said quietly. "You've given her something beyond mobility. You've given her independence, confidence. How do I possibly thank you for that?" Dylan watched Ava demonstrate a spinning move for Lily, both girls laughing with delight. "Her smile is all the thanks I need." The private celebration continued with cake Maria had baked specially for the occasion, the small gathering feeling intimate and meaningful, despite the media attention swirling around the project externally. Ava proudly explained different features of her chair to Lily, her confidence growing visibly with each passing minute. At 4:20, Dylan noticed Maya glancing anxiously at the clock. Understanding her concern, he gently began wrapping up the celebration, mindful of Sebastian Morgan's imminent arrival. "I hate to cut this short," he explained to Rachel, "but I have a business meeting scheduled for 4:30. Rachel nodded, gathering their things. "Of course, we've taken enough of your time already." "Not at all," Dylan assured her, "but perhaps you could use the side entrance. There might be media out front." The slight hesitation in his explanation caught Rachel's attention. "Is everything okay?" Before Dylan could respond, the distinctive sound of vehicles pulling into the garage lot reached them. Through the front windows, they could see 3 black SUVs arriving, their tinted windows and professional drivers signaling corporate visitors rather than local media. "Your 4:30 meeting seems to be early," Rachel observed, helping Lily gather her drawings. Dylan's expression tightened. "Yes, it's with a medical technology company interested in the wheelchair design." "That's wonderful," Rachel smiled, genuinely pleased for him. You deserve recognition for this innovation. Dylan hesitated, then made a split-second decision to be transparent. Rachel, the company is Morgan Medical Technologies. Your ex-husband is coming to discuss the design. The color drained from Rachel's face. Sebastian, here now. Before Dylan could explain further, the garage door opened and Sebastian Morgan entered, followed by Edward Reynolds, and a woman Dylan didn't recognize but assumed was another executive. Sebastian's commanding presence immediately dominated the space, his tailored suit, confident stride, and assessing gaze marking him as someone accustomed to authority. Mr. Crawford, Sebastian began, extending his hand. I've been looking forward to... The words died in his throat as his gaze moved past Dylan to where Rachel stood frozen, her expression a complex mixture of shock and protective concern. For a moment, the successful CEO seemed genuinely destabilized, his practiced corporate demeanor cracking to reveal raw surprise. Rachel, he managed finally, his voice strangely altered. I didn't expect... Clearly, she replied, her composure returning quickly. This is unexpected. The tension in the room intensified as Sebastian's gaze shifted to Ava, who sat in her new wheelchair, staring at the father she hadn't seen in years. The recognition was immediate and mutual, the same eyes, the same analytical expression as they assessed each other across the suddenly inadequate space. Ava, Sebastian said softly, his usual confidence absent, you've grown so much. Ava's response was measured, her voice remarkably steady. That happens in 4 years, I guess. The simple observation, delivered without drama but with undeniable impact, landed like a physical blow. Sebastian visibly flinched. The implications of the time lapsed since he'd last seen his daughter hanging in the air between them. Dylan moved protectively closer to Ava, the instinctive gesture not lost on Sebastian, whose gaze sharpened as he processed the connections forming in his mind. The wheelchair, he said slowly, understanding dawning. It was for Ava. Yes, Dylan confirmed simply. That was always the purpose. Sebastian turned to Edward, his expression unreadable. Give us the room, please. All of you. The corporate team withdrew immediately, leaving Sebastian alone with Dylan, Rachel, and the girls. Lily moved closer to Ava, sensing the emotional currents, though too young to fully understand them. I didn't know, Sebastian said after a long silence, addressing Rachel directly. When the design came across my desk, I had no idea it was connected to Ava. Would it have mattered? Rachel asked, her tone not accusatory but genuinely questioning. Sebastian didn't immediately answer, his attention drawn to the wheelchair itself. With a professional eye, he examined the design features, the customized elements, the thoughtful adaptations that addressed Ava's specific needs. His expression shifted subtly from corporate assessment to something more personal, more conflicted. This is extraordinary work, he said finally, addressing Dylan. You've solved problems our development team has been struggling with for years, and with remarkably simple engineering. Mr. Crawford understood what Ava needed, because he actually asked her, Rachel pointed out quietly. He saw her as a person, not a medical condition or a market demographic. The observation contained no overt criticism, but Sebastian's expression suggested it had struck a nerve nonetheless. He crouched down to Ava's level, maintaining a respectful distance. The chair looks amazing, he offered tentatively. It suits you. Ava studied her father with the same analytical gaze he directed at her. It lets me move how I want, instead of how someone else decided I should. Mr. Crawford made it fit me instead of making me fit it. The insight, articulated with such clarity by a 12-year-old, carried a weight that seemed to land heavily on Sebastian. He glanced at Dylan with new consideration. You're not a medical device engineer, you're a mechanic. Yes, Dylan acknowledged simply, who decided to build a custom, Wheelchair for my daughter. For a child who needed better mobility, Dylan corrected gently. The relationship between you and Ava was never a factor in my decision to help. Sebastian processed this, his corporate calculation visibly warring with personal reaction. After a moment, he stood and addressed Rachel. Perhaps we should continue this conversation elsewhere. There's clearly much to discuss. Rachel hesitated, looking to Ava for guidance. The girl nodded slightly, her curiosity about her long-absent father evident beneath her cautious exterior. We could go to the diner, Rachel suggested. Neutral territory. As the Patterson family prepared to leave, Sebastian turned back to Dylan. Our meeting will need to be rescheduled, Mr. Crawford, but make no mistake, my interest in your design has only increased. After they departed, the garage felt strangely empty, the emotional intensity of the unexpected reunion lingering in the air. Maya emerged from the office, where she'd retreated to give the family privacy. That was intense, she observed, joining her father at the workbench. Are you okay? Dylan nodded slowly, processing the encounter. I never intended to be in the middle of their family situation. You're not in the middle, Maya pointed out. You're the catalyst. Sometimes that's where the most important work happens. Before Dylan could respond, his phone rang, George Dawson calling with unprecedented urgency. Crawford, where are you? Morgan's people are at my office, asking about lease terms and potential expansion options for your space. What exactly is happening? The question perfectly encapsulated the surreal quality of Dylan's week. I'm still figuring that out myself, George. As evening settled over Hillside, Dylan closed the garage early, needing time to process the day's events and prepare for whatever might come next. The empty space where Ava's wheelchair had stood throughout its creation now seemed to echo with possibility and questions. At the Hillside Diner, Sebastian Morgan sat across from his ex-wife and daughters in a booth far from the windows, the family reunion shielded from curious eyes by Joseph Martinez's protective hospitality. The corporate executive, who had confidently entered Crawford's auto care, had been replaced by a man confronting choices made years ago and their consequences in the present. Ava sat in her new wheelchair, its superior design allowing her to position herself comfortably at the table without assistance, a small but significant independence that didn't escape Sebastian's notice. You've built an impressive company, Rachel acknowledged, breaking a difficult silence. Morgan Medical Technologies is doing important work. Yes, Sebastian agreed, his usual corporate pride strangely muted. Though apparently not as innovative as a small-town mechanic working out of his garage. The observation carried no bitterness, only a thoughtful reassessment that suggested the day's events had prompted deeper reflection than anyone might have anticipated. Lily, too young to fully grasp the complexities of the situation, happily colored her placemat while occasionally glancing curiously at the stranger who was apparently her father. Ava maintained a careful emotional distance, neither hostile nor welcoming, her intelligent eyes missing nothing as she assessed the man, who had chosen career over family years before. I'd like to know about your life, Sebastian said finally, addressing Ava directly, if you're willing to tell me. Ava considered this request, her mature thoughtfulness belying her 12 years. After a moment, she gestured to her new wheelchair. This is a good place to start, she said. It's changing my life because someone saw what I needed and cared enough to help. That's a pretty important piece of my story right there. The subtle challenge in her response wasn't lost on Sebastian, whose expression reflected a growing recognition that the business opportunity that had brought him to Hillside might ultimately offer something far more valuable than market advantage. An unexpected chance to confront past choices and perhaps begin healing relationships long abandoned. Back at the Crawford home, Dylan and Maya sat on their front porch watching the sunset, the day's events settling around them like the evening dusk. "What happens now?" Maya asked, voicing the question hanging between them. Dylan considered their uncertain future, the garage's status still precarious despite Dawson's sudden change of heart, the wheelchair project's unexpected success, creating opportunities neither had anticipated, and his inadvertent role in reuniting a fractured family, adding emotional complexity to what had begun as a simple act of kindness. "I don't know," he admitted honestly, "but whatever comes next, we'll face it together, just like always." As night fell over Hillside, 4 lives that had been moving on separate trajectories now found themselves unexpectedly intertwined, each forever changed by a simple decision to help a child in need. Proof that sometimes the most profound innovations aren't technological at all, but rather the human connections formed when compassion and skill combine to address the challenges faced by others. Saturday morning arrived with a surreal quality for Dylan. The garage that had been his daily concern for years, the focus of financial worry and professional pride, now stood at the center of unexpected attention. By 9 o'clock, 3 different news crews had set up outside, hoping for interviews about the wheelchair that had captured regional interest. Dylan avoided them by entering through the back door, preferring to focus on actual work rather than media coverage. Maya, however, recognized the opportunity these outlets presented for their expanding project and agreed to handle the interviews. "Just stick to the technical aspects," Dylan advised as she prepared to speak with the first reporter. "This isn't about personal drama." Maya nodded, understanding her father's desire to protect Ava's family from becoming a public spectacle. "I'll focus on the design innovations and the plans for helping other children." From his workbench, Dylan watched with pride as his daughter handled the interviews with poise beyond her 16 years, articulating the technical aspects of the wheelchair design while emphasizing the broader mission of creating customized mobility solutions for children with specific needs. Mid-morning brought an unexpected call from Rachel. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her voice betraying fatigue from what had clearly been an emotionally demanding evening. "Managing," Dylan replied. "The media attention is uncomfortable. How about you? And Ava?" Rachel sighed. "It's complicated. Sebastian stayed at the Hillside Inn last night. He wants to spend the day with Ava, getting to know her again, he says. How does she feel about that?" Cautiously curious. She has questions only he can answer. Rachel paused. "He's also very interested in talking with you. About the wheelchair design, obviously, but I think there's more to it." Dylan recognized the complex emotions beneath her measured tone. "Are you okay with that? I don't want to complicate things further." "I think it's inevitable at this point," Rachel answered pragmatically. "Sebastian can be intensely focused when he sees potential in something, and he definitely sees potential in your work." After they hung up, Dylan turned his attention to the growing list of inquiries from medical professionals, disability advocates, and families seeking similar mobility solutions. The response to their fundraising campaign had created both opportunity and responsibility, expectations that would require careful navigation. Shortly before noon, Roberto arrived with lunch and news from his connections at Hillside Town Hall. "Mayor Fisher is calling an emergency council meeting," he reported, distributing sandwiches to Dylan and Maya. Apparently Dawson's development deal might be changing. Word is, Morgan Medical Technologies is exploring options for establishing a research facility here. Dylan looked up sharply. "Here? In Hillside?" Roberto nodded. "The Economic Development Committee is beside themselves. A company like Morgan bringing jobs to Hillside would transform the local economy." The implications settled heavily on Dylan's shoulders. What had begun as a simple desire to help one child had somehow catalyzed events with potential community-wide impact. "Any of this officially confirmed?" he asked. "Not yet," Roberto admitted. But when Sebastian Morgan's team started asking about available commercial properties and local workforce demographics, people noticed. The pattern was becoming clear. Sebastian approaching Dylan's innovation not just as an isolated product, but as the potential foundation for something larger. The question remained whether this corporate interest would honor or distort the original purpose of Dylan's work. Early afternoon brought another surprise visitor. George Dawson arrived at the garage not with eviction notices, but with architectural renderings. His demeanor transformed from threatening landlord to enthusiastic business partner. "Crawford, wait until you see these concept drawings," he announced, spreading the papers across Dylan's workbench. Morgan's development team worked through the night on initial plans for expanding this space into a proper research and production facility. Dylan studied the drawings with mixed emotions. The designs showed his modest garage transformed into a modern manufacturing center with multiple workstations, testing areas, and office space. "This is ambitious," he commented carefully, "but I don't recall agreeing to any development plans." Dawson waved away this concern. "Details to be negotiated, of course, but the potential is enormous. Morgan's people are talking about a long-term lease with significant investment in improvements." "And the eviction notice? The back rent?" Dawson's expression shifted to one of magnanimous dismissal. "Ancient history. Given these new developments, I think we can consider that matter closed. The transparent opportunism might have been amusing if it weren't so calculated." Dylan maintained a neutral expression, unwilling to commit to plans he hadn't initiated or fully considered. "I appreciate your enthusiasm, George, but I need to focus on actual work today. We've got commitments to fulfill." Dawson collected his renderings with evident disappointment at Dylan's muted response. "Don't let your small-town thinking limit your vision, Crawford. This could be transformative for you and for Hillside." After Dawson left, Maya approached her father with uncharacteristic hesitation. "Dad, I need to tell you something. Sebastian Morgan contacted me directly this morning." Dylan turned to her in surprise. "About what?" "He asked about Mom," Maya admitted quietly. "Wanted to know about her illness, about how we managed afterward. He seemed genuinely interested in understanding our story." The unexpected direction of Sebastian's inquiry gave Dylan pause. "What did you tell him?" "The truth, that it was hard, that we struggled, but that we had each other and a community that helped." Maya studied her father's expression. "I think he's trying to understand you. Why you would help his daughter when you have your own challenges." This insight into Sebastian's thinking aligned with Dylan's growing sense that the CEO's interest extended beyond mere business opportunity. Before he could respond, his phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Crawford, this is Edward Reynolds, Mr. Morgan's assistant. He was hoping you might be available for dinner this evening. There are matters he'd like to discuss privately." The request suggested a more personal approach than their previous interaction. "Just the two of us," Dylan clarified. "Yes. Mr. Morgan feels a less formal setting might be appropriate for the conversation he envisions." After considering the implications, Dylan agreed to meet Sebastian at the Hillside Inn's restaurant at 7. Whatever the CEO's intentions, direct communication seemed preferable to speculation. The remainder of the afternoon brought practical progress on their expanding mobility project. Valerie Spencer arrived with detailed assessments of 3 children in neighboring counties who could benefit from customized wheelchairs similar to Ava's design. Dr. West connected them with a medical supply manufacturer interested in producing Components to Dylan's specifications at reduced cost. Local welder Kevin Wilson volunteered his expertise for future frame construction. By closing time, the garage had transformed from a struggling auto repair shop to what felt increasingly like the headquarters of a growing social enterprise. The transition was as disorienting as it was promising. "This is really happening, isn't it?" Maya observed as they prepared to leave. "We're not just fixing Ava's wheelchair anymore. We're changing how these things are made and who can access them." Dylan nodded, still processing the rapid evolution of their project. "Apparently so." At 7 o'clock, Dylan arrived at the Hillside Inn, its modest restaurant the closest thing the small town had to fine dining. Sebastian was already seated at a corner table, his corporate armor somewhat softened by casual attire, though his watch alone probably cost more than Dylan's monthly rent. "Thank you for coming." Sebastian greeted him, standing to shake hands. "I thought a more private conversation might be beneficial." Dylan settled into the chair opposite, noting the difference in Sebastian's demeanor from their first meeting. The calculating CEO remained evident, but something more reflective had emerged following yesterday's family reunion. "I spent the day with Ava," Sebastian began after they'd ordered. "It was illuminating. She's remarkably articulate about her mobility challenges." "She has an engineer's mind," Dylan observed. "Her input significantly improved the wheelchair. Design," Sebastian nodded, a flash of pride crossing his features. "She mentioned that. Also made it very clear that her new chair has transformed her daily experience in ways my child support payments never did." The unvarnished assessment hung between them, Sebastian's acknowledgement of his absence from his daughter's life, creating an unexpected opening for honesty. "Your daughter is exceptional," Dylan said simply. "She deserves equipment that matches her potential." "Which brings me to the purpose of this dinner." Sebastian leaned forward, his expression intensifying. "I want to propose a formal partnership. Morgan Medical Technologies would provide the resources to develop your design approach into a full product line, with you leading the innovation team." The offer was both flattering and concerning. "I'm not a corporate engineer, Mr. Morgan. I'm a mechanic who solved a specific problem for one child." "Precisely what makes your approach valuable," Sebastian countered. "Our engineering team has been over-designing, over-complicating, and overpricing our mobility products for years. You've demonstrated that simpler, more customized solutions are not only possible but superior." As Sebastian outlined his vision, Dylan recognized both the opportunity and the potential pitfalls. The resources of Morgan Medical Technologies could, indeed, help scale his approach to benefit more children, but corporate priorities and profit margins could easily distort the personalized care that made his design effective. "What exactly are you proposing?" Dylan asked cautiously. "A dedicated research and development facility here in Hillside, with you as director. Full creative control over design, production capabilities to serve children globally. And," Sebastian added with calculated timing, "a foundation to provide custom chairs free of charge to families who can't afford them." The comprehensive nature of the offer suggested Sebastian had been planning this approach since before their unexpected family reunion. What remained unclear was how much that reunion had altered his motivations. "That's generous," Dylan acknowledged. "But why Hillside? Wouldn't it make more business sense to incorporate this work into your existing facilities?" Sebastian's expression shifted subtly. "Two reasons. First, there's clearly something special about this community that fostered your innovation. I want to understand and preserve that environment. And the second reason," Sebastian studied his water glass, uncharacteristically hesitant. "Ava is here, and I've realized that my distance from her life has been a significant mistake. One, I'd like to begin correcting." The admission's sincerity surprised Dylan. "That's between you and your family. Yes and no. Sebastian met Dylan's gaze directly. You've become important to my daughter in a way I failed to be. You saw a need and addressed it without hesitation, despite your own challenges. That matters. Their main courses arrived, providing a natural pause in the conversation. Dylan considered Sebastian's proposal and the complex personal dynamics underlying it. When they resumed speaking, he directed the discussion toward practical considerations. If I were to consider something like this, I'd need certain guarantees about design approach, pricing, accessibility, control over which features get prioritized. Sebastian nodded, clearly having anticipated these concerns. I'd expect nothing less. We could establish an advisory board including medical professionals, users like Ava, and parents to ensure accountability. As the dinner continued, their discussion evolved from broad concepts to specific implementation details. Sebastian's business acumen complemented Dylan's practical experience, their different perspectives creating a surprisingly productive exchange. By dessert, Dylan had a clearer understanding of both the professional opportunity and the personal motivations driving Sebastian's proposal. What remained uncertain was how this potential partnership might affect his relationship with Ava and Rachel, a consideration that transcended business concerns. I'll need time to think about this, Dylan said finally, and to discuss it with Maya. Any decision affects her future too. Of course, Sebastian agreed, signaling for the check. Though I should mention that the hillside development concept includes a scholarship component. Maya's educational aspirations would be well supported. The mention of Maya's future education, a persistent concern given Dylan's financial limitations, struck a chord. Sebastian clearly understood the practical pressures facing a single parent and was leveraging that understanding in his approach. As they prepared to leave, Sebastian raised one final point. There's something else you should know. Regardless of your decision about our partnership, I've already directed my legal team to transfer full patent rights for the wheelchair design to you. Your innovation, your ownership. The unexpected gesture gave Dylan pause. Why would you do that? Because it's the right thing to do, Sebastian replied simply. And because I've realized that some things matter more than corporate advantage. Walking home through the quiet streets of Hillside, Dylan found himself weighing possibilities that would have seemed unimaginable just weeks earlier. The financial security Sebastian's offer represented would certainly benefit Maya. The resources would allow him to help more children like Ava. Yet something about the corporate framework still gave him pause. At home, he found Maya waiting up, her expression betraying her curiosity about the dinner meeting. So, she prompted as he settled into his favorite chair. What did the billionaire want? Dylan outlined Sebastian's proposal, watching his daughter's reaction shift from excitement to thoughtful consideration. It sounds amazing, she admitted, but would it change what made Ava's chair special in the first place? The personal connection, the customization based on really knowing her. The question went to the heart of Dylan's own reservations. That's what I'm trying to figure out. What does Rachel think? Maya asked. Have you talked to her about it? Dylan shook his head. Not yet. It's complicated given her history with Sebastian. Maya considered this, then offered the straightforward wisdom that often surprised him. Maybe that's exactly why you should talk to her first. She knows both worlds, what Ava needs and how Sebastian operates. The suggestion made immediate sense. Rachel's perspective would indeed provide valuable insight into navigating this unexpected crossroads. Sunday morning found Dylan at his home workbench, reviewing Sebastian's proposal while making notes about potential modifications that would better preserve the personalized approach he valued. His concentration was interrupted by a knock at the front door. Rachel stood on his porch, a tentative smile softening her features. Got time for coffee? There's something I'd like to discuss." They settled on the back porch with steaming mugs, the morning quiet creating a space for open conversation. "Sebastian told me about his proposal," Rachel began directly. "He's quite determined to make this partnership happen." Dylan studied her expression, trying to gauge her feelings about the situation. "How would you feel about that, given your history with him?" Rachel considered the question carefully. "It's complicated. Sebastian is brilliant at building successful enterprises, but he has a history of prioritizing business over personal connections." "I've gathered that," Dylan acknowledged. "That said," Rachel continued, "I've never seen him quite like this before. Something about your work with Ava has affected him deeply. He spent hours with her yesterday, really listening to her experiences for the first time. The information offered a new dimension to Dylan's understanding of the situation." "Do you think his interest in the wheelchair project is genuine, or just a way to reconnect with Ava?" "Both, probably," Rachel answered honestly. "But does the motivation matter if the outcome benefits children who need better mobility options?" The pragmatic assessment aligned with Dylan's own thinking. Results mattered more than intentions, especially when those results meant children gaining independence and dignity. Sebastian mentioned establishing the manufacturing facility here in Hillside, Dylan noted. "That would mean him being here regularly." Rachel nodded, her expression revealing complex emotions. "He's looking at houses, says he wants to be present in Ava's life again." The implications of Sebastian's return extended beyond business considerations, potentially reshaping family dynamics that had stabilized over years of his absence. "How do you feel about that?" Dylan asked gently. Rachel's laugh held more resignation than bitterness. "Like I said, it's complicated. I've built a life here without him. The girls have adjusted to our family structure, but Ava deserves a relationship with her father if that's what she wants." Their conversation continued, touching on practical considerations about the potential partnership and more personal reflections on how their lives had unexpectedly converged. The easy connection between them remained, despite the complications. Sebastian's proposal had introduced. As Rachel prepared to leave, she paused at the steps. "For what it's worth, I think you should seriously consider Sebastian's offer, not for him, but for what it could mean for children like Ava. Your design approach makes a real difference. Imagine that multiplied hundreds of times over." The perspective stayed with Dylan throughout the day as he weighed different aspects of the decision before him. By evening, he had drafted a counter-proposal that preserved his core values while embracing the opportunity to expand their impact. Maya found him at the kitchen table, surrounded by notes and sketches. "Reached a decision?" she asked. "Getting closer," Dylan replied, sharing the key points of his counteroffer. "What do you think?" Maya reviewed his notes thoughtfully. "I think it builds on our strengths while addressing the practical limitations we've been facing. And I like that you're insisting on keeping the personal assessment process for each child." Her approval strengthened Dylan's confidence in the direction he was leaning. The counteroffer would preserve what made his approach unique while leveraging corporate resources to help more children, a balance that honored both practical requirements and deeper values. Monday morning dawned with renewed purpose. Dylan arrived at the garage early, preparing for a day of both regular auto repairs and continued development of their mobility project. The media crews had finally dispersed, allowing a return to some semblance of normal operations. At 9 o'clock, Sebastian Morgan arrived alone, having apparently dismissed his corporate entourage for this conversation. His expression as he entered the garage suggested he'd already anticipated Dylan's decision. "You've been thinking about my proposal," he observed, not a question but a statement. Dylan nodded, leading him to the workbench where his counteroffer lay. "I have some revisions to suggest." As Sebastian reviewed the document, his initial reaction was difficult to read. The businessman, calculating profit potential, warred visibly with something more personal, more invested in the outcome beyond financial metrics. This maintains the personalized assessment approach, Sebastian noted, focusing on a key provision. Even with scaled production, that's non-negotiable, Dylan confirmed. Each chair needs to be adapted to the specific child. Without that, we're just making prettier versions of the same inadequate equipment already available, Sebastian continued, reading, pausing at the section detailing community involvement and local production. You want manufacturing facilities in multiple communities, not just a centralized operation. It creates jobs where they're needed and keeps the connection between makers and users, Dylan explained. The people building these chairs should understand they're creating freedom, not just products. The philosophical underpinnings seemed to resonate with Sebastian in unexpected ways. He studied Dylan with new consideration. You're not just a mechanic with a good design, are you? You have a vision for how this should work. Dylan shrugged slightly. I understand what made the difference for Ava. That same approach can work for other children, but only if we preserve what matters most, seeing each child as an individual with specific needs and potential. Sebastian set down the document, his decision apparently made. We have the foundation for an agreement here. My legal team will need to formalize it, but the core principles are ones I can support. The businessman extended his hand, and as Dylan shook it, he recognized that something fundamental had shifted between them, a mutual respect that transcended their different backgrounds and approaches. There's one more thing, Sebastian added, his tone softening slightly. Rachel mentioned you're hosting a barbecue next weekend to celebrate Ava's new wheelchair. Would it be appropriate for me to attend? I'd like to be there, if I wouldn't be intruding. The request revealed vulnerability beneath the corporate confidence, a father seeking to participate in a moment of his daughter's joy, aware of his tentative standing in her life. That's really Ava's decision, Dylan answered honestly. But if she wants you there, you're welcome. As Sebastian left, Dylan returned to his workbench, the space that had witnessed both his greatest financial struggles and his most meaningful innovation. Whatever came next would build on the foundation established here, not just a mechanical design, but an approach to problem-solving that valued individual needs over standardized solutions. The garage door opened again, and Ava wheeled in, her new chair moving with the fluid grace of perfectly calibrated equipment. The smile she offered Dylan contained all the validation he needed. I heard about the partnership with my dad's company, she said, navigating smoothly to his workbench. Does this mean more kids will get chairs like mine? Dylan nodded, watching her effortless mobility with satisfaction. That's the plan. Each one customized for the child, using it just like yours. Ava considered this, her expression thoughtful beyond her years. You fixed more than just my wheelchair, you know. You fixed something that needed fixing in our family too. The simple observation carried profound truth. What had begun as a mechanical solution had catalyzed healing across multiple dimensions. Proof that sometimes the most significant repairs addressed needs far deeper than what is immediately visible. Some fixes are more important than others, Dylan acknowledged quietly. I'm glad this one helped. Outside, the sun broke through morning clouds, illuminating the garage in golden light that seemed to symbolize the brightening prospects for everyone whose lives had been touched by one mechanic's decision to help a child in need. 3 months later, the transformation of Crawford's Auto Care was complete. The modest garage that had once struggled to keep its doors open now occupied the entire renovated Anderson building, its expanded space housing both the original auto repair business and the newly established Crawford Mobility Design Center. The Autumn sunlight streamed through the large windows installed during the renovation, illuminating the workshop where 4 customized wheelchairs stood in various stages of completion. Each frame displayed unique design elements, reflecting the specific needs and personalities of the children who would use them. Dylan moved between the workstations, mentoring the small team of local technicians he'd hired and trained. His approach remained hands-on, maintaining the personal connection to each project that had defined his original work with Ava. "The balance here needs adjustment," he advised Hector, a former auto body specialist, now applying his skills to mobility. "Equipment. Remember, this chair is for Jackson. He has stronger right-side mobility, so we need to compensate slightly on the left." The personalized assessment process that Dylan had insisted on preserving had proven its value repeatedly. Each child who came through their doors underwent a comprehensive evaluation, with input from physical therapists, parents, and most importantly, the children themselves. Maya entered from the administrative office, tablet in hand. "Dad, the Williams family is here for Sophia's final fitting, and Dr. West called. He wants to know if you'll present at next month's pediatric conference." At 16, Maya had naturally assumed the role of project coordinator, balancing her school responsibilities with growing involvement in the expanding enterprise. Her organizational skills complemented Dylan's technical focus, creating an effective partnership that echoed their long-established father-daughter dynamic. "Tell Dr. West I'll consider it," Dylan replied, wiping his hands on his shop rag, a habit unchanged despite their operation's growth. "And send the Williams family in." As he prepared for the fitting session, Dylan glanced toward the wall where framed photographs chronicled their journey. The centerpiece remained the image of Ava in her completed wheelchair, her face radiant with newfound freedom. Surrounding it were photos of other children whose lives had been transformed by customized mobility solutions, each picture representing not just a successful design, but a child empowered to participate more fully in their world. The Williams family arrived moments later, parents John and Karen accompanying 9-year-old Sophia, whose spina bifida had limited her mobility options. Until now, Sophia's eyes widened at the sight of her nearly completed wheelchair, its purple frame adorned with silver star patterns she had helped design. "Is that really mine?" she asked, her voice hushed with anticipation. "All yours," Dylan confirmed, crouching to her eye level. "Ready to try it out?" The transfer process had become smoother with experience, though Dylan still approached each fitting with meticulous care. As Sophia settled into the custom seat, the perfect alignment of support and proportions was immediately apparent. "How does it feel?" Dylan asked, checking pressure points and balance. Sophia's response came not in words, but in motion, her hands finding the wheels with natural intuition, the chair responding to her touch as if it were an extension of herself. The difference from her previous mobility was evident in her expression, wonder blooming into delight as she executed a smooth turn around the workshop. "Mom! Dad! Look how easy!" she called, her confidence growing with each movement. John Williams watched with visible emotion. "We've tried 3 commercial chairs. None of them worked like this, because none of them were designed specifically for Sophia," Dylan explained. "Her measurements, her strengths, her specific needs, everything about this chair is tailored to her as an individual." Karen Williams dabbed at her eyes. "How can we ever thank you enough?" "Just sending videos of Sophia using it in different environments," Dylan replied practically. "The feedback helps us continue improving our designs." After completing the final adjustments and reviewing maintenance instructions with the family, Dylan watched Sophia navigate confidently toward the exit, her parents following with a mixture of gratitude and wonder that had become familiar in these moments. As they departed, Rachel Patterson arrived through the adjoining door that connected the mobility center to the medical assessment room she now managed. Her role as assessment coordinator had evolved naturally, her nursing background and personal experience creating the perfect foundation for evaluating each child's specific needs. The Gibson twins are scheduled for next Tuesday, she reported, updating their shared calendar. And Valerie says the new cushioning system is working beautifully for Emma's posture control. The easy professional rhythm they had established carried echoes of their personal connection, which had deepened gradually over the past months. Their shared commitment to improving children's mobility had created a partnership that transcended their initial encounter. "How's Ava doing with the adjustments we made last week?" Dylan asked, genuinely interested in the ongoing refinements. "To her chair," Rachel smiled, "racing the track team if you can believe it. Coach Davis created an adapted program where she competes against time standards rather than other runners. The chair's maneuverability makes it possible." The news confirmed what Dylan had always believed, that proper equipment could open doors previously closed to children with mobility challenges. Ava's continued progress remained a touchstone for their expanding work, a reminder of where everything had begun. "And Sebastian's visit this weekend?" he inquired, aware of the evolving family dynamics. "So far, so good," Rachel replied, her expression reflecting the complex but improving relationship. "He's taking both girls to the Science Museum in Valley View. Lily's excited. She barely remembers him from before, so it's almost like getting to know a new person." Sebastian Morgan's re-entry into his daughter's lives had progressed with measured steps over the past 3 months. His purchase of a modest home in Hillside, significantly less grand than his Dallas penthouse, signaled a commitment to establishing a genuine presence in their lives, rather than just weekend visits. His involvement with the Crawford Mobility Project had similarly evolved, from purely business interest to personal investment. Though he maintained his position as CEO of Morgan Medical Technologies, he had delegated day-to-day operations to focus on the partnership with Dylan, bringing corporate resources to bear while respecting the unique approach that had made the original design so effective. The afternoon brought another significant visitor, Dr. Alison Fletcher, head of research for Morgan Medical Technologies, arriving for her weekly collaboration session. Her initial skepticism about a mechanic-led mobility design had transformed into genuine respect as she witnessed the results firsthand. "The data from the first 20 chairs is remarkable," she noted, reviewing performance metrics on her tablet. "User satisfaction rates are nearly double the industry standard, and the adaptability factors are unprecedented." Dylan nodded, pleased but not surprised by the confirmation of what he'd intuitively understood from the beginning. When you design for the individual rather than the average, people notice the difference. Which is precisely why I'd like you to consider joining the presentation at the International Mobility Conference, Dr. Fletcher continued. Medical designers need to hear this perspective directly from you. The invitation represented yet another expansion of Dylan's unexpected role in transforming mobility design approaches. Though still uncomfortable with public speaking, he had gradually accepted that sharing his methods might help change industry standards more broadly. "I'll think about it," he promised, the same response he gave to most speaking requests. "Though Maya's the better presenter," Dr. Fletcher smiled knowingly. "That's why we've already invited her to participate. The father-daughter innovation team makes quite an impression." Late afternoon brought the weekly team meeting, gathering the growing staff of the Crawford Mobility Project around the conference table that had once been Dylan's simple workbench. Roberto, who now managed their supply chain, reported on material sourcing. Valerie updated everyone on therapeutic outcomes from recent fittings. Maya presented the community outreach statistics, while Rachel outlined upcoming assessment schedules. As Dylan listened to these reports, he marveled at how organically their operation had evolved, maintaining the personalized approach he valued, while expanding to help more children. The partnership with Morgan Medical Technologies had provided resources without compromising their foundational principles, a balance he had insisted on from the beginning. When the meeting concluded, most staff departed for the day. Maya lingered, gathering her notes while studying her father with perceptive eyes. "What?" Dylan asked, recognizing her thoughtful expression. "Just thinking about how much has changed," she replied. "Remember when we were worried about losing the garage? When making payroll seemed impossible?" Dylan nodded, the memory of those financial pressures still fresh despite their changed circumstances. Life can turn on a dime. On a wheelchair wheel in our case, Maya corrected with a smile. "Are you happy, Dad, with all this?" Her gesture encompassed the expanded facility and everything it represented. The question deserved honest consideration. Dylan looked around at what they had built together. Not just the physical structure, but the mission it embodied, the lives it touched, the community it had strengthened. "I am," he answered simply. "Not because of the success, but because each chair represents a child who can move more freely through the world. That matters more than anything." Maya's expression softened. "Mom would be so proud of both of us." The mention of Melissa brought a familiar bittersweet warmth. "She would, especially of you." As evening approached, Dylan locked up the mobility center while Maya headed home to finish a school assignment. He walked through the adjoining door to check on the auto repair business, which continued operating under the management of Hector's brother Vincent, allowing Dylan to focus primarily on wheelchair design. The familiar smells of motor oil and metal reminded him of where everything had started. The simple garage where he had first noticed Ava struggling with her inadequate wheelchair. Though his professional focus had shifted, he remained grateful for the mechanical foundation that had made his innovation possible. Outside, the autumn air carried a crisp edge as Dylan walked the short distance to the renovated community park. The new playground, installed through a joint donation from Crawford Mobility and Morgan Medical Technologies, featured accessible equipment allowing children of all abilities to play together. He found Rachel already there, seated on a bench overlooking the playground, where Ava and several friends navigated the accessible structures, their laughter carrying across the evening air. "Mind some company?" he asked, gesturing to the empty space beside her. "I was hoping you'd stop by," Rachel admitted, making room on the bench. Ava was just showing her friends how she can access the castle tower with her chair. They watched in comfortable silence as Ava demonstrated the maneuverability of her wheelchair on the specially designed ramps, her confidence evident in every movement. The contrast with the isolated girl Dylan had first observed watching others play from a distance could not have been more profound. "The school called today," Rachel mentioned after a moment. "Ava's science project on mechanical engineering won in first place. She's been invited to the regional competition." Pride warmed Dylan's expression. "She has a remarkable mind." "She does," Rachel agreed, "and having proper mobility has unleashed her potential in ways I hadn't even anticipated. It's not just about physical access, it's about the confidence that comes from independence." The observation captured exactly what had driven Dylan's design approach from the beginning, understanding that mobility equipment wasn't merely functional, but fundamentally connected to a child's sense of self and possibility. Their conversation flowed easily, touching on upcoming wheelchair projects, Ava's academic progress, and Sebastian's ongoing efforts to rebuild his relationship with his daughters. The complexity of their interconnected lives had settled into a rhythm that, while unconventional, worked for everyone involved. As twilight deepened, Other families began departing the playground. Ava joined them at the bench, her cheeks flushed with exertion and satisfaction. "Did you see me on the tower platform?" she asked, her wheelchair stopping smoothly beside them. "Last year I couldn't even get through the playground gate by myself." "I saw," Dylan confirmed. "Your chair handling gets more impressive every day." Ava beamed at the recognition. "I've been practicing the tight turns, and I'm teaching Katie how to navigate her new chair too." She gestured toward one of her friends, a younger girl who had recently received her own custom wheelchair through the Crawford Mobility Project. The mentorship role Ava had naturally assumed with other children embodied the ripple effect of their work, each child empowered becoming a source of inspiration and guidance for others facing similar challenges. "Mr. Crawford," Ava continued, her expression growing more serious, "would it be okay if I helped with assessments sometimes? I think I could explain things to new kids from their perspective." The request reflected her growing confidence and desire to contribute. "I think that's an excellent idea," Dylan replied. "Your experience would be incredibly valuable to other children." As they prepared to leave the park, Sebastian's car pulled up, right on schedule for his planned evening. With his daughters, the silver Mercedes seemed increasingly out of place in Hillside, a remnant of a life that Sebastian himself appeared to be gradually reconsidering. He approached with the slightly tentative manner he still displayed around Dylan and Rachel, his corporate authority softened by the humility that came from reconnecting with the family he had once abandoned. "I heard about Ava's science prize," he said by way of greeting. "Congratulations, sweetheart. I'd love to hear about your project." Ava launched into an enthusiastic explanation of her mechanical efficiency study, a direct application of principles she had learned while helping design her wheelchair. Sebastian listened with genuine interest, his expression reflecting both pride and regret for the years of her development he had missed. When Lily came running from the playground to join them, the family prepared to depart for their dinner plans. Sebastian hung back briefly as Rachel helped Lily to the car. "The partnership agreement renewals are ready for review," he informed Dylan, smoothly transitioning to business matters. "The board is extremely pleased with the preliminary results. Your insistence on maintaining the personalized assessment model has been validated beyond question." Dylan nodded, accepting the professional acknowledgement while recognizing the personal subtext. Their unlikely partnership had proven successful precisely because they had found common ground in their desire to improve children's lives, albeit from different starting points. "Will you be at the barbecue tomorrow?" Sebastian asked, referencing the community event planned to celebrate the completion of their first 25 custom wheelchairs. "Wouldn't miss it," Dylan confirmed. "Maya's handling the logistics." With a nod, Sebastian rejoined his family, the picture they presented as they drove away still a work in progress, relationships being rebuilt, trust gradually restored, new patterns establishing themselves in place of old wounds. Walking home through the quiet streets of Hillside, Dylan reflected on the journey of the past months. The wheelchair that had begun as one mechanic's solution to one child's problem had catalyzed transformations no one could have predicted, not just in mobility equipment design, but in relationships, community dynamics, and individual lives. At home, he found Maya on the front porch, textbooks spread around her as she studied under the warm glow of the porch light. "Productive day?" she asked, looking up from her work. Dylan settled into the chair beside her, taking in the peaceful evening and the sense of security that had replaced their previous financial anxiety. "Very. The Williams fitting went perfectly." "I saw Sophia before they left," Maya smiled. She was already naming her chair Starlight after the design patterns. The personalization of each wheelchair by its user had become a cherished aspect of their process. Children claiming ownership not just of mobility equipment, but of their individual expressions of independence. "I've been thinking," Maya said, after a comfortable silence, "about what happens when I graduate next year, with college and everything." Dylan turned to her, attentive. Educational considerations had simplified considerably with the establishment of the scholarship program attached to their partnership with Morgan Medical Technologies. But he recognized that her thoughts likely extended beyond practical concerns. "I want to study biomedical engineering," she continued, "but I also want to stay connected to what we're building here. The personal aspects, not just the technical ones. We'll figure it out," Dylan assured her, recognizing in her concern the same values that had guided their work from the beginning. "The most important thing is maintaining what makes our approach special, seeing each child as an individual with unique needs and potential." Maya nodded, satisfied with this affirmation of their shared philosophy. "That's what I wanted to hear." As night settled over Hillside, lights glowed warmly in the windows of homes throughout the community. In one of those homes, Ava Patterson sat with her father, patiently explaining mechanical principles he had never taken time to share with her before. In another, Rachel helped Lily prepare for bed, their family configuration different but stronger than it had been months earlier. Throughout the town, children who had received custom wheelchairs from the Crawford Mobility Project moved with new freedom in their homes, their equipment perfectly suited to their individual needs and designed to grow with them through the coming years. And on his front porch, Dylan Crawford, once just a struggling mechanic trying to keep his garage open, sat with his daughter, secure in the knowledge that their work was transforming lives one wheelchair at a time. The success they had found wasn't measured in profit margins or corporate expansion, though those elements had their place. The true measure lay in each child who could now navigate the world more independently, each family that found new possibilities opening before them, each barrier removed through thoughtful design and genuine care. What had begun with one mechanic, noticing one child's struggle, had evolved into something that touched countless lives. Proof that sometimes the most important innovations arise not from corporate research departments, but from one person's decision to address a need others had overlooked. As Maya returned to her studies and Dylan gazed up at the stars appearing in the evening sky, he felt a profound gratitude for the unexpected journey that had brought them here. The path ahead remained filled with possibilities, more children to help, more designs to improve, more barriers to overcome. But the foundation had been firmly established. See the individual, understand their specific needs, and create solutions that enable them to move through the world on their own terms. It was a philosophy that had not only transformed Dylan's professional life, but had created ripples of change, extending far beyond what any single wheelchair design could accomplish alone. In the quiet evening, that knowledge settled around him. Like a benediction, the certainty that work done with care and purpose carries forward in ways that cannot always be predicted, but that matter deeply in the lives they touch. It was enough. It was everything. The end. Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss this. Just click to watch. And don't forget to subscribe. It would mean a lot.